Golden State carriage about to depart Westminster Abbey as the bells of the Abbey toll for the coronation procession, which will basically be the King's procession in reverse, heading through Admiralty Arch, down the Mall, and back to Buckingham Palace. Athea, you really get a sense on a day such as this one that the institution outlives, I should say, the people who occupy even the top posts.
Yeah.
I mean, it stays, the cast of characters changes.
Absolutely.
And this king is the newest one.
And this is the thing is, this institution outlives all of us. All of us. And like you say, the casting...
For better or worse?
For better or worse. I mean, considering the first coronation that took place here in 1066, and here we are in 2023 doing it all over again, shows the staying power of the monarchy and in the royal family. And we've talked about opinion polls over the past few weeks and the popularity of the monarchy amongst young people saying it's not very high, but there is an overall percentage of people who do think we should have a monarchy, that the royal family is good for the United Kingdom and the realm and the Commonwealth, and that is why we still have all this today. And you're absolutely right, you know, we may not see another coronation, but this will happen and it will continue for thousands of years to come.
Let's go now to Anne-Marie Medaway Osman at Buckingham Palace. And I understand, Anne-Marie, that at the exact moment where King Charles was crowned with the St. Edward's crown, there was a crowd beside you that erupted in a spontaneous singing of God Save the King.
Omar, you know, there was actually a really powerful moment when they were singing God Save the King, and everybody, there was 3,800 people in those bleachers, all rose, and it was almost like the sun was shining on the royal standard, and they were standing and cheering, and it was a really beautiful and moving moment. Look at, here's the character. Are these the children?
Yep. This is wonderful.
And now, Sally, this is what I'm wondering. You know when you've gone to a really big party with your partner, and you go in the car afterwards, and you drive home, and you talk, what do you think they're talking about in the car on the way home?
Well, hopefully they're saying, well, that went well, didn't it? That went well, didn't it? And what a relief to get that heavy crown off. Because the St. Edward crown is pretty weighty, weighs 2.2 kilos, and it's a mighty thing to carry around. So, yeah.
Speaking about them as a couple for a moment, because I know you know them well as a couple.
Well,
you work
working for them, yeah.
And you know, you see people that you see them behind the scenes the way we do not. But there was a moment when they were together, and they both had the, and you can see them lock eyes, and it's like they just saw one another and smiled.
I think they were trying to lock eyes and just reassure each other, probably. They'll probably be, now they're back in the carriage, we'll be having a little giggle about the discomfort of the carriage, probably, but also about how amazing it is to see so many people on the streets. And remember, right now, we've just heard that fantastic peal of bells from Westminster Abbey. Peals of bells will be going on right across the country at the same time. Which is incredible to see. We're seeing photos now of the family emerging from Westminster Abbey, Prince Harry among them. But yep, they'll now be on their way in this phenomenal procession, the like of which we've not seen since 1953. In fact, it's even bigger than that. 4,000 military personnel. It stretches for a mile. So by the time the carriage gets to the gates of Buckingham Palace, the end of the procession will still only be at Downing Street in Whitehall. So it's quite a spectacle. There's Princess Anne, gold stick in waiting, an honorary position as part of the bodyguard for the sovereign and his queen.
You know, we just saw a shot of Prince Harry there, and there was thinking of the brothers, there was a beautiful moment with Prince William and the King when he pledged allegiance, and you see them as a father and a son in a moment there.
It was, well, I mean, and of course, because of the words he says, you know, I'm your liege man of life and limb, of course echoes the words that Prince Philip, as Duke of Edinburgh, said to the Queen at her coronation. And it's profoundly moving to see it, you know, it was moving then husband to wife, and this time from, you know, son to father was also incredibly important. And also when Prince William made the homage as well.
I mean, the color, the pageantry. I mean, Britain came to show up and show off today. They sure did.
That's a really lovely way of putting it. Really lovely way of putting it. I mean, the last time I saw that coach was sitting on the other side of the Mall from here for the Diamond Jubilee celebrations, and
there's a wave from the children. There's Louis,
so
who managed to behave himself for the entire ceremony, at least the parts that we saw.
He did.
And look at sweet Princess Charlotte
in her
with
little
the Mummy and Me outfit with Princess of Wales, Alexander McQueen, the diner there.
There's Prince Harry.
And they're all still waiting outside Westminster Abbey. It's, you know, it's like waiting for an Uber.
With Prince Michael of Kent there.
And Omar, I'd love to know what you're seeing from where your vantage point is.
Well, we were just talking about that actually, Anne-Marie. It looks like Prince Harry has just entered the vehicle. It was a bit awkward. Slightly.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the first to leave, but all the members of excuse me, the immediate members of the royal family have left. He's in a car in front, just got into the car. Prince Andrew is in a car behind. Now we're going to see the carousel of cars that we saw probably when we were walking up earlier on, actually, picking up dignitaries and taking them, I don't know, Prince Harry going to the airport or going to the reception. We see Prince Andrew leaving there in a state car. And yeah, everybody is off pretty quickly. We see the security officers filling out, making sure that they are there as well.
And it was great. Anne-Marie and Sally were talking about the fact, as we were, that there's a very special connection in a moment between Prince William and his father.
Absolutely.
When he knelt and pledged allegiance. It is equally powerful to see that despite the tumult in the family,
yes,
that Prince Harry was able to make the trip from California and be there for his father.
Absolutely.
And that his father was able to have his son there too.
Absolutely. And also that he was seated with family. You know, there was talks of him being in the 10th row or being at the back, but he was very firmly within the bosom of his family, sitting with his cousins that he's close with, Beatrice and Eugenie and their partners. And that was great to see. I'm pleased that that is how it played out. And it was great to see him there, actually great to see him as part of the celebration and bowing his head to the king as he passed the family there. So it's good that he was here.
And what is equally great to see is that despite this weather today, and by the way, it has been a relatively great week here in London with sunny skies.
Until today.
Today, of course, it has been pouring throughout the morning and afternoon. Despite that, a significant turnout, a great turnout, in fact, at Hyde Park, where CTV's Joy Malvin is standing by. Joy.
Hey, Omar. I'm here in Hyde Park with a lot of people who suffered through a very soggy, right royal celebration. But, you know, there were so many moments. People began singing God Save the Queen when they saw Prince Charles crowned, when Prince William kissed his father's cheek. You could hear people say very loudly, "Oh," like this. There were so many magical moments. But take a look around. There were so many umbrellas. It's soggy, but people are flying their Union Jacks. And I've talked to a lot of people here, and they say the reason why they had to be here, even among strangers, is to celebrate their heritage. It's a point of pride, and this coronation is something many of them have never even seen. It was religious at times, the sacrament. They loved the choirs, and of course people are trying to stay dry. But look at me. I've got my right royal robes on just to join the coronation.
All right, Joy. Malvin at Hyde Park, and you can see the procession now making its way slowly back to Buckingham Palace. Of course, it will be passing through Admiralty Arch, and that is where we find Danielle Hamanjian, who has been there with the crowd all morning and through the afternoon. Danielle, what's it like where you are?
Well, I'm not going to lie, Omar, during the ceremony, it was absolutely miserable. Listen, in 1953, yes, things were different. The ceremony was 3 hours instead of 2. The procession was longer, but the weather was pretty similar. And the Queen at the time said that her journey on board the Gold State coach was, although majestic on the outside, she said it was horrible on the inside. It was so cold that day that her staff had to strap a hot water bottle to the seat so she could stay warm. I would pay good money for a hot water bottle at this moment. But listen, the crowd has been, I expected so many people here to just leave once the King and the Queen arrived at Westminster Abbey. Not a single person moved. They stayed quietly, patiently during the ceremony with their umbrellas. Some of them were watching it on their smartphones, but we have a loudspeaker here, so we heard the entire ceremony. It was like this open air church service, and in a way it was even more powerful that we couldn't watch it, we could only hear it. So it was quite powerful, but I tell you, the rain has now stopped for now, and people are, you know, they're out with their phones and they can't wait to see the King now with his crown on. And this is the moment for a lot of people. This is the essence of the monarchy, the moment where the crown is placed on his head. It is full circle now. It is the image people see when they think about the monarchy. It's the picture they see on the coin and on the money, and they're going to see him now in just a few moments.
Represents the quintessence of what, including the rain.
Absolutely.
And you know,
absolutely.
we have had so many conversations about the relevance of the monarchy in Canada, of course, and across the realm countries and across the Commonwealth. But we have to point out that on a day like today, when the weather isn't great, you have the world's media here covering this historical occasion. You have thousands lining the streets. There is a certain affinity, especially in this country, for the monarchy.
Yes, there really is. There really, really is. And that is absolutely so obvious on a day like today, where it is pouring down with rain, and you still have people lining the streets in this cost of living crisis, in this terrible weather, in 10% inflation. That shows how much people do appreciate and love the royal family, you know, and whether you're a royalist or not, you have to admit that they are still a huge draw. I mean, you have crowds lining the streets, you've got people who are in those special zones around Buckingham Palace and around Trafalgar Square. That's for a reason. You've got people up and down the country probably sheltering at the moment, but having their street parties. It is for a reason. And that's because of the royal family, and also because when are you ever going to get a chance to see this many members of the armed forces, 4,000 members of the armed forces, parading through the streets of London in broad daylight with a golden state coach pulled by horses? People want to be a part of history. And actually that is what we all are. We are a part of history. Covering this, you and I are an integral part of history. It's a story we'll be able to tell our grandchildren. And you know, you had a piece of people thinking about and talking about the coronation in 1953. People will be interviewing us about the 2023 coronation. It's a complete spectacle. It's something that you will never see anywhere else. And people love that. They love to be a part of this.
And we talk about, and it looks like okay, it looks like these are members of the RCMP. That's just what I was trying to get some more information on. 5 members of the RCMP from the RCMP's musical ride taking part in that coronation procession. One of those horses was gifted to the royal family officially just a couple of weeks ago, in fact, at Windsor Castle on April 28th. And the RCMP member who's riding Noble, that's the name of the horse, was telling me just a couple of days ago that it was such a tremendous honor for him, not just to represent the country, but also his First Nation. Sergeant Jeremy Dawson riding that horse, Noble. you know, we talk about the sense of duty that the monarch has, but the sense of duty that each and every one of these people has taking part today. I mean, you know, we finished the show earlier this week, and even at 1:30, 2:30 in the morning, there were rehearsals in the core of London just to prepare for this day.
Absolutely. I mean, they have had a super busy week, like you said, rehearsing for a couple of weeks in the dead of night, and then to turn it around to make sure their shoes are shined, that their hats are fluffed to walk through the streets of London. This is a really integral part of what they do. Yes, in the army, in the navy, in whatever part of the armed forces you're in, you do go to war for your country, but you're also about pledging allegiance to your commander-in-chief and serving the king. And that is what so many of them, 4,000 members of the armed forces, are so proud to do. It's incredible.
There are still, though, those who feel that the monarchy should not exist, and Geneviève Beauchemin is near Trafalgar Square, where there have been some small protests throughout the morning and the afternoon. Jen.
Well, it's been a tale of boos and cheers here at Trafalgar Square. There are people who've gathered here, and earlier they were crowding around the speakers because, just as Danielle was talking about before, there's no screens here, so there were the royal watchers who were gathering around the speakers to hear the ceremony, and some of them pledging allegiance to the king. But right next to them were protesters who have been holding up their signs. So while some were screaming, "God save the king," others were screaming, "Down with the monarchy," and he's not my king. And so certainly a lot of differences of opinion here. Some of the protesters spent a lot of time booing throughout the ceremony, explaining, they said that they wanted their voices heard. There were some arrests earlier on in the day. One of the leading figures of the anti-monarchy movement was arrested even before the ceremony, even before things got underway. He was in a road nearby getting placards out of his vehicle when he was arrested by police, and we're told also that there were also 5 volunteers with that group Republic who were also detained by police at some time. We did see police taking away some of the flags from some of the protesters, but really the protesters were outnumbered even here at Trafalgar Square, with a lot of royal watchers who had come to really be here, wave their flags. And there's also a lot of Canadians in the crowd right here. We're of course in the shadow of Canada House, and there were a lot of maple leafs waving, people saying that this was, you know, little Canada Central here, where people were meeting from across Canada. They didn't know each other before. They had met here, watched, and were in awe to see the carriage go by. Were in awe to see the pomp and circumstance of what happened this morning.
Geneviève Beauchemin from near Trafalgar Square. I have loved seeing all of the images of the children. We just saw the images of the children waving from the landau there with their parents, Prince William and Princess Catherine. Charlotte looking so poised and so elegant, even at that young age.
She really
along
does.
with her brothers, George and Louis. Anne-Marie and Sally, I'm sure that is going to be one of the special moments of this day, along with so many others.
Omar, I think you said something about Prince George, and I'll tell you why we can't hear you. Because it is the largest number of marching bands I've ever seen or heard in my life is marching right beside us. But it is something to see, and it keeps coming and coming, and it fills the mouth with color. I mean, look at this shot. Sally, it is side to side, full of marching bands.
Well, it is.
Anything like this?
It's 19 bands, 1,000 musicians. It's quite extraordinary. And they're all now going into the back garden of the palace to line up for a royal salute, which will be quite something. So hopefully we'll get some good shots of that.
Now, I'm going to lean outside of our tent here, which is, you know, not what a meteorologist should do, but it feels like it has stopped raining. So does that mean the fly past may happen on time?
I'm not a meteorologist either, but if the clouds are okay, then hopefully it will happen. If the clouds are too low, they'll have to call it off.
Rain or shine, Princess Anne would be on that horse no matter what.
Look at her. Oh, exactly. You can't get her off it. She looks fantastic. And we should any moment now begin to see the
I can hear the
carriage coming round the corner, which will be fantastic.
And they've added 2 more horses to pull that carriage.
Yeah.
Because it's a big one.
Because it's a big one. It weighs a ton. So I think we've got 8 Windsor Greys now, as opposed to 6.
And
this
Omar,
is just
I don't know
wonderful.
if you can hear us over this incredible band and the hooves and soon to be the cheering. From my vantage point, I can see those 3,800 volunteers and people who've been honored guests here at this incredible ceremony who have stuck around, no shelter, they're all wearing ponchos just to see this moment and to cheer.
Anne-Marie,
So
we
here
can
come
hear you,
the,
but just barely because we're
the
having to
naval
contend with the...
groups.
I was just saying, you guys have the sound of the bands. We have the sound of the bells at Westminster Abbey. So it is just a symphony of sound in this city and a spectacle of color on this historic day as that procession makes its way to Buckingham Palace. And of course, now we are all awaiting the balcony shot and who's going to be on that balcony, which is a photo op that is mostly reserved for royals. We know that Winston Churchill did make it onto the balcony. I believe it was in 1945.
Yeah.
At the end of the war. But
So-
we're going to see who shows up today.
Well,
How
yes.
many people?
Now, this balcony shot, it's the money shot. It's the one that all the photographers want to have. It's the one that all the photographers want to get. So, we did get a list of who we think will be on the balcony shot. So, of course, you're going to have the King and Queen, I guess we can call them now, King Charles and Queen Camilla. You will have the Prince and Princess of Wales. You will also have George, Louis and Charlotte. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence. You also have the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Prince Edward and Sophie. You'll have Prince Edward, the Duke of Kent, Princess Alexandra, and the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. That's got to be the list of 15 people who will be on that balcony. It's restricted to working royals only. So no, you're not going to see Prince Harry, and thank goodness we're not going to see Prince Andrew either. But another thing that we are waiting to find out is, and as I'm saying this, I think it's stopped raining. I don't know, I'm scared to put my hand out there. Well, the other thing we're waiting for is the RAF fly past. Now, this is a really, really impressive, an incredible part of the coronation. But if the weather doesn't hold, if it is raining, and it has been raining quite heavily this morning, the fly past won't be able to take place. Now, in 1953, the last coronation that we saw, the fly past was late. It was about 2 hours late, and it was smaller than anticipated. They had about 600 aircraft in the end. And then 2 weeks later, they had a bigger fly past. Like I said, 600 aircraft. This fly past is smaller, only 68 aircraft taking place, but they have to leave, or they will have to leave around now. The fly past comes in from the east of England, it comes in from the North Sea, over Essex and over into London. If they're going to leave, they have to leave by now. So we're on standby to see if the fly past will happen.
And fingers crossed it does happen. It is spitting a little bit still, and it does look overcast, but we will have to see if that does go ahead as planned. Of course, no one can control the weather, but hopefully it does go ahead, that fly past. Anne-Marie, that carriage, the Golden State carriage, is now quickly approaching where you are. This procession route back to Buckingham Palace slightly longer than the King's procession to Westminster Abbey.
Omar, you know, they were just showing shots of the King and the Queen, and she is now officially Queen Camilla. The
Queen Camilla, yeah.
You know, somebody said that to me here in London. They called her the Queen, and I thought, right, she's the Queen. I'm so used to thinking of it as Queen Elizabeth II. I think it's going to take me a little bit to get used to it.
I still call him the Prince of Wales.
Okay.
But yeah, and now we're going to have to get used to talking about the late Queen, as we now have our undoubted Queen, as the ceremony would have it. And I think they're just about to appear and come round our
It'd be
corner.
nice to see them close up after having watched them. Sally, there were moments in that ceremony that you were very moved.
I was because you understand the theory of the coronation, and I've watched the Queen's coronation, the late Queen's coronation, but to see it come alive like it did today so magnificently was wonderful. The music, when you heard Zadok the priest strike up, and you knew the anointing was coming, and that very profound moment, I was very tearful, I have to say. I just thought it was beautifully done, beautifully done.
we keep seeing the shots of the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children, who all did a great job. Prince George, you know, he was the youngest of that set of pages, but he did his grandfather, he did his father proud,
Here they
the
come.
country proud, and here they come. And you know, the king making a point of looking over at the stands and giving a wave, just like he did on the way down, and the crowd is waving back. What a moment.
I bet they'll probably be quite glad to get out of that carriage now.
And can you hear the cheers, Omar? I don't know if you can.
That's good. They're going right in front of all of the volunteers, which is lovely.
So then, Sally, once they make this trip around, they'll go in front of Buckingham Palace and then back through the gate. And then what happens next? Are there photographs inside?
Yep, they'll go through the centre gates of Buckingham Palace to the grand entrance that leads into the state apartments. From there, they'll probably have a little bit of a breather, because at the moment in the garden of Buckingham Palace, so many 4,000 military are amassing. And there will be a salute of honour, a royal salute of honour. So that will, while everybody's mustering there, the King and the Queen will then go out onto the terrace to take the salute. And then when they come back in, that's when they will do all the official photography. Even before, I believe, they come onto the balcony. But the official photography has not been done yet.
And Sally, for, you know, sort of that beautiful photograph that everybody wants to see on the balcony, is it working royals? Is it like Trooping of the Colour when the entire family comes? Because really, this is the giant Christmas card.
No, it won't be the entire family. It hasn't been for some time now. It'll be those members of the family who will be part of the King and the Queen's support network, basically, who will help them do the jobs that they are now crowned to do. So it'll be interesting to see who is on the balcony and who isn't. I think we can make some guesses who won't be there. But it will be lovely to see.
I'm still holding out hope he'll be there with his boy.
Well,
call me an optimist, Sally. Or maybe I'm just too sentimental. Oh, and
we're all profoundly in love with Prince Louis, aren't we?
We are.
So here they go, through the centre gates. Through the centre gates and through the centre arch to the grand entrance. And it was interesting, in 1953, the Queen commissioned a behind-the-scenes film where there's the famous footage of her getting out of the carriage, still holding the orb and the sceptre, and smiling with relief. And I don't know whether there are cameras there today. It would be great if there were, so that we can see them get out and have that sort of same sense of relief.
I think Prince Louis is done. I think he's over it now. Omar, we'll send it back to you.
And other members of the family.
I love that you said that, Anne-Marie, because I was thinking the exact same thing. I think Prince Louis is ready for a nap, and to be honest, I think a lot of us are. It has been a long few days, but certainly a spectacular few days. I'm just loving seeing that shot of him through that window. A couple of key moments that we are now waiting for, as Anne-Marie and Sally mentioned. First is that balcony shot, which should be happening any time now, as the family enters the palace and essentially gets ready to step out onto that balcony, which has been prepared for this day. And of course, the fly past, and just a little bit more information about the fly past. If it does happen, again, the skies, as you can see, are overcast. And it has been raining all day. It will feature 60 aircraft from the Royal Navy, British Army and Royal Air Force flying over the Mall in central London. The Royal Air Force Aerobatic Team, the Red Arrows, will follow dozens of aircraft used by armed forces on operations around the world, and featured among the aircraft in that fly past will be aircraft that have delivered support to Ukraine, supported disaster relief, policed NATO airspace, and deterred drug trafficking and counter-terrorism. You can see, or you did see not too long ago, the 3,800 people who have been invited in that grandstand right in front of the palace, putting up with all this rain that we have been seeing. And another group that has been putting up with all this rain is the crowd at Hyde Park, where Joy Malbon is standing by. Joy, I hope they're trying to find some way to stay dry, either with umbrellas or ponchos.
Hey Omar, I'm here in Hyde Park with Richard and Becky from England, and look at their lovely crowns here. We've been talking a little bit about some of the moments that we've seen today, and I want to ask you, love the t-shirt by the way, what was the moment for you that you thought, wow, here we are, we have a new king?
It was when he kissed the Bible, and then he was given the orb and the staff, the spectre and everything. That was, you know, he had the gown on. It was just absolutely incredible.
You know, Becky, I was looking at many people and they were saying, God save the king, God save the king. But there were some lovely moments as well, like when Prince William kissed the cheek of his father. What touched you the most?
Actually, a really small thing. When the king first entered the Abbey, he walked in and he looked so serene, and he just had a very quick look around and just walked up. He looked really sort of dignified. And obviously there's a huge tradition behind this and a huge weight of expectation, and he just looked very calm, but he kept sort of catching people's eye and ever so slightly smiling. It was really touching.
And so now you have an official king here.
We do. It's, you know, after the wonderful reign of Queen Elizabeth II for so long, it's it's a new time, a new era.
Did you say God save the king? Did you make a pledge?
Absolutely.
We did, yes we did.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard and Becky. Back to you, Omar.
All right, Joy, so thank you so much. And we have just received a statement from the Governor General, Mary Simon, who is here in London for the coronation. And part of what her statement says is that, you know, it has been 70 years since the last coronation. And she says so much has changed. The evolution of technology, society, and economics is happening at a quickening pace. And while the crown has also evolved during this time, it continues to be an anchor for our robust and stable democracy and our diverse country. She then goes on to say that King Charles's meeting with national indigenous leaders this week reinforces his interest in renewing the relationship between the crown and indigenous peoples, which we know, Afia, has been fractured. And even though he did have that meeting this week, and indigenous leaders to whom I spoke a couple of days ago said it was a very positive meeting. It was only supposed to last 45 minutes, but it lasted an hour. He has still not apologized for the colonial legacy and his family's role.
And that is what a lot of people are looking for. Sorry seems to be the hardest word, but it's what people want. It's what indigenous leaders want. It's what a lot of communities want and need to be able to move on in the way that they would like to. Now, I think the problem is that if there is an apology, that leads to discussions about reparations, and then how much money is reparations? Is it money? Or is it supporting infrastructure? Is it making sure we have better outcomes for certain communities? And that's a discussion that the royal family are not really keen to get into, because one, the amount of reparations could be incalculable. It could run into the trillions. But number two, if they pay reparations to one community, do you have to pay it to all communities? And then that could run into exceedingly high amounts of money as well. But I think sorry is a good start, and that's what a lot of communities want and frankly need. And let's remember that 80% of the people that King Charles III deigns to rule over are from the global south, are from black and brown communities. And so that apology would go a long way.
Let's take you now back to Danielle Hananjan at Admiralty Arch. And, you know, people have shown up with all sorts of makeshift crowns, flags.
Makeshift everything.
Yeah.
Are they still day drinking? That's what I want to know.
Well, when Joy Malvin spoke to us early this morning, people were already 2 hours in, and that was at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. So I'm sure there are a few more in, certainly, but that's why they have this bank holiday on Monday, as we know. A big concert at Windsor Castle tomorrow, and then that public holiday on Monday. Danielle Hananjan, what are you seeing where you are?
Well, I mean, people have just seen this majestic carriage, the gold stake coach that just went by. I don't think people understand just how massive this thing is. It's 7 meters long, nearly 4 meters high. It weighs 4 tons. It has to be pulled by 8 coaches. It's the oldest working royal carriage here in the UK. Who knows when it will be used again, and who knows when this next balcony shot, when the next coronation shot will take place. I can tell you that the people behind me now are just waiting to fill up the Mall. They've removed the metal barricades. There's now a human chain forming of the people with the visors, and as soon as they split, you'll see thousands and thousands of people fill up the Mall. And you know, when you think back to 1953, there were no smartphones at the time. People couldn't watch from the end of the Mall, from Trafalgar Square, what was happening. But this will be the moment of King Charles III on the balcony. By his side will be Queen Camilla and all senior members of the royal family. And people, I've just been really stunned of how patiently, how calmly they have waited. This was an open-air church service, really, and who knows how many people here regularly go to church, but they waited here and they listened to this church service. And there were no screens here, but there was a very, very loud speaker next to me, and it was almost more powerful that way to listen to what was happening rather than to be watching it. But what a moment, the moment that King Charles was crowned, and for many that is really the essence of the monarchy, the placing of the crown on the monarch, and that is what happened today. Listen, there's no rain. It is raining a little bit, but certainly not nearly as miserable as it was during the ceremony. So let's fingers crossed this fly pass does work for the 60 aircraft ready to fly over central London.
An immensely powerful moment Danielle had mentioned there at Admiralty Arch. You know, we spoke so much around the time when the Queen passed of her sense of duty, and King Charles is also motivated by the same sense of duty. We talk about Monday being a day off, but of course that is a day that has been dedicated as the big help out to really create a lasting volunteering legacy for the coronation weekend. And we can't also forget that he started the charity, the Prince's Trust, with his Navy severance pay of just over £7,000 in 1976, and in that time, that charity, his charity, has supported over 1 million young people.
Absolutely, and the Prince's Trust is definitely going to be his legacy. It's done some incredible work with young people up and down the country, helped them set up businesses. I mean, I know some people who've done some absolutely incredible things. You know, Charlotte Mensah, Ghanaian hairdresser, you know, who has done hair of all the celebrities you can think of. She started her work with the Prince's Trust, with the help of the Prince's Trust. And like I said, that is going to be his legacy, and he wants to pass that on. So as you said, Monday is the big help out. So if you have recovered from the late opening times of the pubs over the weekend, what the monarch would like you to do is use Monday as a day to volunteer in your community, at a charity, at a voluntary organisation, you know, perhaps a food bank, to help out in your community and give back in some way. And you know, I think it is a really, really good idea. You're going to have lots of people getting involved. But I think it's also the power of communities, recognising the power of community, and it was that power of community that got people through the pandemic. It was that power of community that is helping people through this cost of living crisis. There's people volunteering in organisations every single day, not just on Monday, whether it's food banks, whether it's children's groups, whether it's children's charities, all the time. I think it's good that he's encouraging people to do this. It's great that he still has the Prince's Trust, and that's helping people worldwide. I think it's incredible. And also, let's remember, he did have 850 people who have done great things in their communities, whether that's working with the Prince's Trust, working with their own organisations, and just done incredible things in their life here today. So that has also been represented. A huge part of his legacy is volunteering, is service, longest serving heir. He had to do something in that time that would be significant, and the Prince's Trust, as well as his work with sustainability, has been that.
And we can't forget that he himself, aside from the Prince's Trust, is the president or patron of over 800 charities and initiatives in total. Are you surprised by his personal evolution? I mean, then Prince Charles has been portrayed or perceived as somebody who was perhaps cold, unfeeling, stoic. But seeing his face today and the emotions indelibly etched, particularly during the time the crown of St. Edward was put on him, and also, again, when his son, the Prince of Wales, the now Prince of Wales, knelt before him and pledged allegiance. I mean, you really got the sense that he understood the weight of the moment and the weight of history.
Absolutely. I mean, you couldn't write the evolution of Prince Charles to King Charles III. I mean, when he was married to Princess Diana and during the time of his divorce, he was portrayed as cold and calculating, and, you know, people called him Charles the Cruel and everything. And you know, he softened in his old age, and Camilla has been an integral part of that. She has done her duty and done her service as his consort, as his wife, now as the Queen, and she has really been instrumental in turning him around. We talked about the 25 years and the PR masterclass that she has had.
For her.
Absolutely, but she's also passed that on to him. Like I said, the Prince's Trust is a huge part of that. But also he's morphed into, or is trying to morph into, this grandfatherly figure. The way that we saw Queen Elizabeth II as a grandmotherly figure. I don't think he's ever going to have the same popularity or ever going to be afforded the same affinity that she was. But he is definitely trying to be that person. You know, grandfatherly, father of the nation, grandfather of the realms. That's the kind of personality, and that's the kind of persona that he wants to have and he wants to give across. Like I said, Camilla has been instrumental in softening him around the edges. I think it definitely helps him that he's in his 70s ascending to the throne, because he is seen as softer. He is trying to be more of a man of the people. King Charles 20 years ago, I'm not sure how that would have planned out.
We just saw a shot of the balcony at Buckingham Palace, and we know that the family will be emerging from that balcony in just a few moments' time. It is always a moment that resonates. I remember being quite surprised, really, when I was here covering the wedding of Prince William and Catherine, and everybody was waiting for the big royal smooch after the wedding.
Yes.
And as soon as they did that, as soon as they emerged from the balcony, I mean, there was such a jubilation and such an electricity that emerged in the crowd.
Listen, the balcony moment, like I said, it's the money shot. It absolutely is the money shot. And, you know, we also remember the Queen in the Platinum Jubilee last year when she came to the balcony wearing green. And we didn't think that we were going to see her on the balcony. And people were absolutely delighted to see the Queen on the balcony. So the balcony shot is hugely important. It's hugely significant. And yet all eyes will be there in the coming moments. And that's where they will also take the salute. Yes, 10 to 2, so they'll be out there momentarily. That's where they also take the salute from all of these armed forces gathered there on the lawn, looking absolutely resplendent. That grass is so green. It's beautiful, isn't it?
It certainly is, and they have had a lot of time to prepare. Anne-Marie, I'm sure everybody's waiting for that balcony shot where you are as well.
Hi, Omar. Yes, we are. But this is a very important moment as well, taking this salute from the armed forces in the garden, from the West Terrace of Buckingham Palace, which is the place where everybody emerges from as they emerge into garden parties. So this is an incredibly important moment as well.
Symmetry and these formations are incredible. Just want to take a few minutes to listen in and take it in.
Hundreds! Count! 3 cheers! His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Queen. Hip hip! Hip hip! Hip hip! The parade will replace headdress. Replace headdress. Chairlift. Rose, quick, march.
Sally, you were just pointing out some of the key players here this afternoon.
I was. So the controller from the Lord Chamberlain's office, who've been responsible for all these big ceremonials, really, really important. But that hasn't happened. I don't think it happened at the last coronation. So that's a kind of a new innovation. But now they'll be entering inside to prepare themselves for the balcony, which I think is due to happen in about half an hour, possibly. And yet more marching bands.
You were mentioning the Lord Chamberlain is responsible for these types of events, and he's to be applauded. You talk about military precision. That is it to the extreme.
But the military are responsible for the military position, working with the Lord Chamberlain's department to ensure that all of the ceremonial, works in sync. And they've been doing it for many years, and it's a wonder to watch, because nothing's been done on this scale for such a long time, and so I'm sure they'll be relieved it's gone with such precision and wonder.
You saw a bit of a smile across the King's face at the crowd.
I hope so. I think it was interesting listening to you talking earlier about taking on a more grandfatherly role and kind of his legacy, and talking about the Prince's Trust. But don't forget, the Prince's Trust was only one of dozens of charities that he set up. It's probably one of the most famous because it has a global resonance. And look at the people starting to pour in.
As Danielle has said, the barricades were down. They had to make a human change to stop them because they were itching to get into the Mall, and here they go.
Here they come.
This never ceases to amaze me. And this is how the Brits do it right. There are masses of people, and everybody is rushing, but nobody is pushing. Everybody knows they're going to the same place and they want the same destination, and you know how to do this.
Yeah.
They do this a lot.
It's kind of, maybe it's in the British psyche, I don't know.
That including
crowd. It's all about crowd formation, isn't it? You look at the way these troops have been, and the military have been moving, and now you look at this kind of crowd moving. It's very good humoured. People have been standing for such a long time and getting very wet, but they're still good humoured.
Yeah, it has not dampened their spirits, as they say. So they'll fill into the Mall, they'll go up around the Victoria Monument, I understand, and then they will wait for the balcony shot, which you think is probably around half an hour away, maybe?
I think so. I think it's due out at 2:30ish.
They're bringing their flags. They've got their outfits and their hats and their headbands and everything else they managed to find in order to celebrate a very special occasion. There's something very powerful, Sally, about seeing the two of them standing there together, crowned with the robes.
Yeah.
This is what he wanted. He wanted to stand there with Camilla. He's waited to be king.
Yeah, I'm sure he could. You know, he when having worked for him, he never talked about becoming king. That was never his prime objective. He knew it would happen one day, inevitably, but his most important thing was about making a difference and helping people, but not just helping people, but actually realizing people's potential, and you know, and coming up with solutions, not solutions to problems, whether it's climate change or the built environment, all the kind of the broad spectrum of interests that he has. You know, he's a true polymath. You know, we saw that reflected in the service to a degree with, you know, his love of music and the arts. You know, he's a really interesting, intelligent, and now, because of his long experience, wise man. You know, I always say that politicians are often quite envious of members of the royal family because they have listened to and met far more people than any politician could ever meet in their kind of tenure in office. Whereas the royals, you know, because they're at it for decades, they really do store wisdom. The late Queen had that. Every Prime Minister said it was of huge value. And the Prince of Wales, as he was, has that because of being Prince of Wales for such a long time. So, you know, he brings phenomenal wisdom and phenomenal value to not just the UK, but to the Commonwealth. I mean, you know, I know people are talking about the costs of staging this, of the costs of the royal family overall. But I mean, it's not an exact science, but I mean, the reckoning is that they bring in 4 to 5 times the value than it costs in terms of tourism, in terms of trade, etc. So, you know, they know their value. It's public value and economic value. Look at that.
I recognize the shot of people in a rush. I think that's where our Danielle Hamamdjian is.
Anne-Marie, for the past 7 hours, I have been standing on this footstool, unable to move because there are so many people around me. They have all disappeared and they have all gone down through Admiralty Arch, down the Mall to get a shot, to get a view of that famous balcony shot. I was just asking a woman who was here with her poncho drenched, and I said, you know, why did you come here today? It is cold, it's miserable. And she said, it is a privilege to have the royal family. So, you know, Omar and Afia were talking about this early on, about how, sure, the royal family can unite, and these royal events do unite people. There is a lot of division, yes, but still, it's sort of, there's so much affection for this family, and for a lot of people, it goes back to their parents. It goes back to their parents because they were just, you know, especially, you know, parents of a certain age, post-war in the 1950s. It was all grim, it was all dark, there was no hope, there was nothing to look forward to. But the royal family was there, and it was a source of joy for a lot of people, and that stayed for a long time. And so that sense of, you know, people feel a sense of attachment. They often refer to the royal family as sort of the extended family. It might sound strange to people, and I can understand that, but after living here for nearly a decade and having covered a number of royal events, these are always the same answers I keep hearing over and over again. And having, you know, I was well surrounded, I have to say, during the ceremony, of people standing next to me. And they were just saying that this is, you know, they don't have an Independence Day, there's no Canada Day. This is a source of national pride for them. And they do it well. There's the pomp and the pageantry, and they absolutely love it. And, you know, going back to the cost of living crisis, sure, it's going to cost a lot of money. Taxpayers are going to pay over £100 million, maybe $150 million Canadian. And some people say King Charles can afford it. We don't know how much he's worth, but he's worth a lot of money. He doesn't pay income tax. He didn't pay inheritance tax when his mother passed, and we don't know how much he inherited because the royals are exempt from publishing their will. So why didn't he pay for this day? But as so many here have pointed out, it is one day in 70 years. And it generates a lot of money. There are people from all corners of the world here. I saw a Swedish flag, saw some Canadian flags. I met a 20-year-old woman who came from Germany the other day because she just loves the royal family. And so the hotels are filled up, the pubs are full, the restaurants are full, so it will generate a lot of money. And so that is the counter argument to so many people who are saying that they should pay for it themselves, that they cost a lot of money, but they bring in a lot as well. Omar.
All right, Danielle, thank you. These pictures are simply astounding. Before today, we were wondering if we would see the types of crowds that we saw for the Queen's funeral. And I think it shows you that in this country, at least, there's still a tremendous sense of connection that people have with the monarchy.
Oh, certainly. There definitely is. You know, I talked about the affinity of the Queen not necessarily transferring to King Charles III, but there's still the diehards who really, really love the monarch and the idea of the monarch and the royal family, no matter who is on that throne. And I know we've talked about it a lot, but the weather is pretty miserable. And yet the streets are absolutely packed. People want to see that balcony moment. They want to see those 15 working royals out there. They've packed them out for the fly past as well, which, as we know, at this particular moment in time is still happening. It's thought the Red Arrows are gearing up to leave in about 10 minutes time or so. Yeah, that's what I believe at the moment, but that could change because the weather is extremely changeable. But people love the royal family, they love the monarchy. They have turned out in this miserable weather with their flags and their ponchos to be part of this historic occasion.
A historic occasion that includes 6,000 men and women of the UK's armed forces and nearly 400 armed forces personnel from at least 35 Commonwealth countries. And we know that there is a significant contingent of people who have come from Canada as well. And I believe Joy Malbon at Hyde Park has a couple of them standing by.
I have discovered Rebecca from Canada and Alma from Romania. They have become fast friends to come here to celebrate it. I want to ask you, Rebecca, you're a Canadian. Was there a particular moment during this whole ceremony that touched you, that moved you?
Yeah, it was when they showed the Mounties. I actually spontaneously started cheering, which I wasn't expecting at all, because that's not how I do things. And I was so proud. Yeah.
Proud to be Canadian and proud to be here. Why did you come here? I mean, it's pouring rain. You could be sitting in front of the television set, drinking tea, being dry and warm. What is it?
Well, I'm from the West Coast, so the rain is not a problem. And I thought this is the only coronation I'll probably ever go to in my lifetime, and I really wanted to do it and have the experience. So.
And you met Alma here, and look at this fascinator. Look at this. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yay.
And what have you enjoyed the most out of this ceremony?
Also, I can't believe that I'm under the rain watching the coronation. Then, like Rebecca, I don't know, I want to be part of the history. Why not? It's something unique, and I don't know if I'll have another chance to. Yeah.
And so it can rain all it wants. You can see that some of the crowds have thinned out, but people want to be here. They want to experience history, and I just love how strangers become fast friends even in the rain, Omar.
All right, Joy Malbon in Hyde Park. Joy, you'll have to forgive me. I can't hear a thing you just said because of the bells behind me at Westminster Abbey that have been chiming now for quite some time, I'd say the least.
Thank you, Omar, for saying that, because I was thinking, I wasn't sure if they were just in my head now because they have been ringing for so long. Yes.
We'll be hearing them through the night, at least in our ears. It looks like the Abbey has now cleared out. 2,200 guests today, far fewer than the Queen's coronation in '53.
Absolutely. Now, they've all sort of gone round the back where I believe a reception will be taking place for them. And it's quite a long time it takes to empty out the Abbey of those 2,200 people. So world leaders and everybody else in the congregation will go to that reception around the back of the Abbey. They have all filed through there, yet the bells are still ringing, Omar. They're
They're still going.
They're still going. And remember, if the flypast, fingers crossed, does happen, we're going to have the flypast and the bells to contend with, and the marching bands. There's a lot going on.
It's a symphony of sound, a veritable symphony of sound. We've talked at some length about the cost of this coronation today, especially at a time when this country is going through a cost of living crisis, 10%. We know that there are healthcare workers who have been striking, teachers who have been striking. The estimates on this coronation expected to be around £100 million, so about $1.6, $1.7 million, depending on how good your exchange rate is. Despite the cost, though, given the times that we're living in, is there an aspect of this day where people almost need it in order to feel more hopeful, or is there a sense that it is too ostentatious, too opulent, especially given the times we're in? I mean, you live here. You have a better pulse on the situation than I would.
I think it's pretty much 50-50. I think there is a lot of people who think, you know, we could do with a party, we need some joy, we've had some hard winter, and we need this coronation to cement stability, right? Stability in the country with the government. Like I said earlier on, we've had a real change in Prime Minister, from Boris Johnson to Liz Truss to Rishi Sunak, so we've had some instability there. The Queen dying, that was a bit of instability as well, but King Charles has taken up that mantle, and the coronation kind of symbolises and solidifies the stability. But then there is a lot of people who are saying, oh my gosh, what a waste of money. How dare they have such a huge, ostentatious, expensive coronation, £100 million just for the coronation, £150 million in security costs, so the estimated total is £250 million. How dare the UK government spend this kind of money when people have had a winter, and even like today, where people are choosing between heating their homes and eating dinner? Do I feed myself or do I feed my child? These are real conversations and situations that have happened to people living in this country, and they will turn on the television, see this, and feel like they're being made a fool of, and feel like they have been forgotten. So it's a real 50-50 split.
We know that during the Queen's 70-year reign, there were 17 countries in which she was removed as head of state. And this was a woman who was by and large adored. What does that mean for King Charles and his reign?
Well, you know, it's got to be his first job, and going to be one of his first jobs, to make sure that the realms and the Commonwealth stay strong, because he needs that to stay relevant. The royal family exists for the people. It exists because of the popularity of the people, not just in the United Kingdom, that's across the realms. And, you know, he is going to have to face probably a litany of countries that want to release him from being their head of state. Jamaica, Belize, the Bahamas, all these kind of countries are talking about it and thinking about it. That's just within the realms. When we talk about the Commonwealth, the wider group of about 56 countries, he still wants to have influence over them, because that gives the monarchy and the royal family importance. So it's crucial for him to make sure that countries stay part of the club, right? Stay in the gang, because it makes the royal family and the monarchy so much more powerful than it is when it's just about the United Kingdom.
A club, but you know, the language that he used in his tweet today after he met from representatives of Commonwealth countries was a volunteer organization. So he is still aware that he, you know, wants to give them a sense of agency, or at least have them perceive that they have a sense of agency within this club. Anne-Marie and Sally, you know, we've talked a lot about the divisions and the fractures within this club, but, you know, and people's support for the monarchy, but on a day like today, at least, and at least here in this city, gauging by the thousands of people that are on the street, there is a tremendous show of unity as well.
So, Sally, we were just talking about that. I mean, despite all the polls saying 50-50, I'm kind of ambivalent, or, you know, I mean, look at this crowd that has shown up in the pouring rain for this event. It is incredible to see this sea of people and the flags from all over the world.
Yeah.
And they're almost upon us now.
They are right beside us. There's going to be a roar in a moment. We probably won't be able to hear ourselves think. they let them through. But you're right, these crowds tell you something about, you know, being swept up in the moment, but also there is a lot of support for the monarchy because people understand the work that they do, which often is on a very small scale at a community level, as well as the big global bits and, you know, the big international focus that this is attracting.
But I think the king also understands that there is a population that needs to get to know him as the king.
Yeah.
And so we saw part of that reflected in this service and in this ceremony, where he did try to inject some of things that are a priority for him.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, the things that we've seen, the sort of how the service was changed to reflect, you know, many faiths, not just one. And a lot of the fact that the music was so kind of powerful, that he had such a hand in it. And one of the most interesting things that we haven't talked about is just what the role that women played in this coronation that they didn't play in 1953. So you had, you know, women bishops for the first time. You had women processing the regalia into the abbey, which I don't think we actually saw in pictures. You had Penny Mordaunt, who is president of the council, carrying the sword of state. That's never happened before. Women composers. I mean, there were women dotted all the way through the service, which never happened before, which is not just a reflection of modern times, but, you know, the king's always been a great champion of gender equality, and the Queen, in her role as patron of women of the world, also very much supports gender equality. And so, you know, I think we've seen a very modern ceremony and an ancient ceremony today, and it's great to see women playing a great part in it, alongside a queen as well, because we haven't seen that for a while.
Listen, we're two women playing a part in it today, and if we go back to that watch shot of Buckingham Palace, in your lower left-hand side of your screen, you'll see where our broadcast booth is, and you'll get a really good sense of just how close we are to the massive crowd. I mean, they are chock-a-block, as you say, over here.
There we are.
There we are.
Right on the corner.
See where it says King's Coronation? See my blue coat? You can see my blue coat and Sally's pink coat. That's just there, bottom left-hand side of the screen. Oh, this guy, his crown is deflated, but his spirits are high. And a lot of young people. Can I point out that was a surprise for me?
That's a very good observation. Lots of kids, lots of young people. And I don't think this is just because it's a bank holiday and it's a great occasion. They're here because it's a moment in history, but I think they're also here because they support the monarchy and they see the, as I say, the value that the monarchy brings to the UK, and that the king, as head of the Commonwealth, which is a very different job from being king, the value he brings to the Commonwealth as well. And as you were saying earlier, you know, the Commonwealth is a very, very, very strong entity. 56 countries, the most they've ever. Patricia Scotland, who's the Secretary General, was saying only this morning, you know, it's the most countries they've ever had. Some of them coming not just from British Empire, but from the old French Empire, and you know, it's a healthy organisation, and we should be very proud to be part of it.
Sally, the last time I saw crowds like this was when the Raptors won the NBA championships in downtown Toronto, and this is that times 100, I think. In an orderly fashion, with police and military in front and behind, they've sort of spaced them out just to keep the crowd orderly. They are walking towards the balcony. They will fill up this space at any moment. And the people, those 38,000 fans, I wondered, those 38,000 guests, I wondered if they
3,800 guests.
3,800, yeah, thank you for the correction. I had wondered if they would come down, but no, they have fantastic seats.
They've got the best
see what
views.
Everyone's waiting for, which is this shot at the balcony. And Sally, for viewers who may not have heard before, the flag that we'll see eventually that is flying above Buckingham Palace right now is the royal standard, but it's a special
It's
flag.
called the State Standard, and it is for very, very, very special occasions. It is a sight to behold, really. Look at it, it's fluttering beautifully now. It was a bit droopy to begin with, but it's really, which is also a good signal for the fly past.
Oh, and then they're waving at us. Let's wave back. They're ready to celebrate and they're ready to party. And you know, this isn't the end of it. Of course, Omar and Afia, we know that they are also, there's events tomorrow. There's the concert tomorrow. There's the big lunch on Monday. There's the help out. I mean, this is really a celebration that's going on and on.
Tomorrow is the big lunch, and it's been patron of the big lunch for quite a few years, which will be great fun. And then the concert tomorrow night at Windsor. And then, yeah, the big help out on Monday when people are encouraged to volunteer. And volunteering is something that isn't new to this king. Back in 2013, he launched a big initiative when I was working with him called Step Up to Serve, which had huge support. It's morphed into something else now, but that was one of his other great initiatives.
You know, I love the story, Sally, of when the king was born. The police had to come out and shush the crowds because they were cheering so loud and he needed to sing. And there's a story, I don't know if it's true or not, that they also started to sing lullabies from this very spot, and now here he stands as king. Is that true?
I've never heard that story before, but it sounds like it. I want it to be true.
Omar, the crowds are really filling in here. I'm sure you can see them. We'll send it back to you at Westminster Abbey.
And when there is a will, there is a way, and we are getting some information about that fly past. We're wondering if it would happen at all given the weather.
Yep.
But what are we hearing?
So we are hearing that it will be formed of helicopters and the Red Arrows only because of the pretty rubbish weather conditions that we do have here. The display will last 2 minutes and 30 seconds and is expected around 2:30 p.m. with the royals watching from the balcony, of course. Now, if it's happening at 2:30 p.m., that means the Red Arrows have already taken off. As we said, you know, they fly into London, into England from the east. They are pretty fast, so it won't take them long, but they're probably on their way as we speak. And it is such an incredible display. I think it's a real shame, actually, that we're not going to get to see that in its full glory. This did happen with the Queen's coronation in 1953, and they did do it at a full display a couple of weeks later. So fingers crossed, when the weather improves, hopefully we'll get a full fly past in a couple of weeks. It's so spectacular.
And what a spectacular way to cap off what has been a spectacular day. I'm just looking down at my watch. It is just coming up to 2:20 here in London, and that fly past expected to take place now in about 10 minutes time. It was initially supposed to last about 6 minutes, and now just under 3 minutes, so has been scaled back. But the good news is, despite this weather that we've been having today, it will go ahead. And I just keep going back to the thousands of people who are gathered along the Mall and in front of Buckingham Palace, and the fact that they have turned up.
Yeah. And they're now letting people closer to Buckingham Palace so they can see the royal family on the balcony, and thousands of people streaming in there in their ponchos with their umbrellas. They are braver, women, men, kids, and everything in between them. And you know, it's great that they are going to get some sort of fly pass as well as that balcony moment, you know, to reward them for coming out in this weather. It's been a long old day. The people in the seats behind in Buckingham Palace have been there since 7 o'clock this morning. I think those seats open about 6:30, so it's been a long, wet, cold day. So it's great that they'll get to see something, but people still streaming in down the Mall towards Buckingham Palace, and I'm sure the pubs around are opening up and gearing up their pints for when this is all over, because people will want to warm up. And actually we can, in amongst the bells, we can now hear helicopters, which means that the fly past is probably getting closer, that they're getting into formation.
Momentarily now, in about 9 minutes time. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts as you were watching the ceremony earlier today. To what extent do you think Prince William was taking notes or realizing that he would be in that chair someday?
I'm really glad you asked me that, because I've been thinking about that actually, that this is a really poignant moment for him. Remember we talked about King Charles and Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, thinking that, you know, this is a momentous day for both of them, but it's momentous because their mother is not here. And probably Prince William is thinking, one day I'm going to be sitting in that chair, and perhaps Prince George will be touching the crown of my head, will be saying words to me and giving me a kiss on the cheek, but my father won't be here. And that's really it, isn't it? You know, there hasn't been an abdication in so long, and we shouldn't expect there to be one. And so for Prince William to fulfill his destiny, he has to do it under the guidance of his father, but ultimately without his father. And then his son, to fulfill his destiny, has to do it under his guidance, but without him. Such a strange dichotomy,
and thus the chain continues, but it has got to be such a strange feeling in many ways. I mean, to some extent, they know that this is what they are born into. This is a day that they prepare for most of their lives.
Yeah.
And yet, I'm not sure you can ever prepare for the moment where the crown of St. Edward is placed on your head and you're anointed with that oil.
Absolutely not. I mean, you can do all the rehearsals you like, you can do all the walkabouts you like, you can greet all the world leaders you like, but nothing will really prepare you for the moment that crown is placed on your head by the Archbishop of Canterbury. And also thinking about the history behind these relics. They've been passed down for thousands of years and endorsed with diamonds from all these incredible places. You know, the weight of history literally on your shoulders. The phrase is heavy as the head that wears the crown, and that really, you know, resonates. Absolutely true today, but also for Prince William. He is one step closer to his destiny, isn't he? He's now the heir, he's now the king in waiting. I think he's going to have quite a business-like relationship with King Charles. I think they will be ruling in tandem in some ways, because with all due respect, the reign of King Charles III probably will not be that long. We can expect William to reign for a bit longer. Obviously, we don't know what will happen in the future. And so we can expect them to be working together on this. And so William will be prepared for his reign to come, which I think will be probably quite soon.
Anne-Marie Medawake and Sally Osman at Buckingham Palace. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. How closely will Prince William and his father be working together now that he is officially king? I mean, the two of them have already been working closely together.
Sally, I don't know if you could hear the question. Omar is asking how closely will the Prince of Wales and King Charles be working together now that they're both of them are in sort of these new official roles. Does that change at all?
Well, in a way it does, in the sense that William, as the new Prince of Wales, will be the primary support to the monarch. So they will probably share quite a lot of ceremonial duties and official representation duties. But equally, you know, the monarch has certain jobs to do because they have quite a clear job description, whereas the king, when he was Prince of Wales, often used to say to me, you know, I didn't have a job description when I got this job, I had to make it up, which he did through, as we were talking earlier, about the Prince's Trust, about business in the community, about the sustainability, architecture, agriculture, charities that he set up. So they'll work together, they will synchronize things as well. But, you know, there's a lot of ground to cover, and William's obviously got his own big interests, like the Earthshot Prize, etc. So there'll be some working together, but that equally, you know, they'll also be ploughing their own furrows, because you need to spread everybody around. And everything in the palace now is so much better coordinated. Here we go,
the door
fly past.
opened. The doors are
not
open.
The fly past. Oh, here he is.
There they are, the king and the queen, and listen to the crowd. There they are, joined by the queen's companions, the pages. Queen Camilla's sister is there. And there's Prince George to the left.
Fia Hagen, as you're watching these images of the balcony, what are your reflections? I mean, this is significantly scaled down. I actually thought there would be more people on that balcony from the royal family.
Well, what's significant for me right now is how many of the younger members of the royal family we have on the balcony. These are some of the pages who carried the king and queen's robes, some of Camilla's step-grandchildren and step-nephews, blended family, like we said earlier on. We also have Queen Camilla's ladies-in-waiting on the balcony there also. I think we've got more people coming out, so we do have, of course, we have the Prince and Princess of Wales with George and Louis. Now, Louis, as we know, doesn't enjoy a fly past, so we can expect his hands over his ears at some point. We have the Duke and Duchess of the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh and their daughter is on the balcony as well. We have the King and Queen in the centre there. And I think we did have the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester and the Duke of Kent as well towards the end.
You make a really good point. I mean, this positioning of this family and more of the royal family has come out onto the balcony. This positioning is not random. This is extremely well thought out and extremely meticulous. And the fact that there are very young members of the royal family flanking the king and queen says something.
Flanking the king and queen and front and center. You have Camilla with her, so basically you have Camilla with her grandchildren on one side, the king with his grandchildren on the other, the young pages, they are front and center. You have the Prince and Princess of Wales off to the king's right, and then you have off to the queen's left, you have the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester and the Duke of Kent. It's incredibly significant, actually, with her ladies in waiting as well there. It's incredibly significant that is how it has played out. I didn't expect that. That was not on my bingo card.
The Queen wearing Queen Mary's crown, of course, which has been redesigned for this day using a recycled crown as they go.
Yep.
And King Charles now wearing the imperial state crown. This is an interesting story. I mean, the crown of St. Edward, with which he was crowned at the coronation, is the only time we are going to see him wear that crown.
Yes.
That crown stays in the Tower of London and then goes back inside the Tower of London. And the last person to have worn it was his mother, Queen Elizabeth. What he will use going forward is the crown he is wearing.
Which is the imperial state crown. I know. Okay, Louis is just not having it with his waving. I live for Louis and his waving. An interesting fact about that crown you were talking about, only 3 people are allowed to touch that crown. That is the crown jeweler, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the heir as well. So when you saw William put his hand up to it, he probably didn't touch it completely. And the fly past is happening.
And the Queen seems as surprised and enchanted with this fly past as everybody else.
Yes. But is Louis enjoying it? That's what I want to know. Not yet. Charlotte's mastered the wave, we have to say. And this imperial state crown that he's wearing, this does have the Cullinan diamond in it, which has been disputed.
I believe it was last year around this time for the trimming of the color around the Diamond Jubilee, where there's that iconic shot of Louis covering his ears during a fly past because the sound was so loud and so strong.
Louis,
today, his tolerance for the noise seems to be a little bit
better.
greater.
He was 100% not enjoying it last year. I think perhaps his mom has just whispered to him, okay, the planes are coming, it's gonna be okay. He seems to be okay with it this time around.
Maybe he just needed a little bit of a warning, which he didn't receive last year.
Maybe he just needed a trigger warning. So these are the helicopters, which we can also hear over here with the bells. They're keeping those bells going. How glad are we? These are the helicopters which are in formation first, and then we should hear the red arrows, possibly, hopefully see the red arrows.
And the fly past we know was originally supposed to last 6 minutes, but was scaled back because of
the weather,
all the rain that we have been getting here. But the fact that it is happening at all is
incredible.
Incredible.
With this inclement weather.
And Anne-Marie is at Buckingham Palace, right in front of that balcony where the king is waving and his queen is beside him. Anne-Marie, it is going to be one of those moments that people talk about and remember for quite some time.
Sally, the crowd certainly loved it, even if it was a shorter version than the original.
Well, I think we've still got the red arrows to
here
come.
They come.
Yeah, here they come. And it is...
Listen to the crowd.
They're probably about to destroy.
Oh, okay, here they go.
Here they go. There come the red, white, and blue.
Canada, listen to this crowd.
Oh, it never fails to please. Brilliant.
What did you say, Sally? It never fails?
It never fails to please with the red arrows. Always brilliant. I think it's
The crowd is pleased. You know, the children are always fun to watch, and their reactions to that as well.
But that is such a significant shot.
Tell me why.
Because aside from the children, that's every single working member of the royal family. And it's wonderful that the Queen's, the late Queen's cousins, the Gloucesters, the Duke of Kent and Princess Alexandra are all included because they were her support structure when she first became Queen. And now they're supporting her son. And the royal anthem for the crowd to sing. Wonderful.
Beautiful.
I think somebody's trying to coordinate a hip hip hooray.
Omar, I have watched this on television at some of these celebrations, but to be here in person, to see people, the king waving and the crowd waving back, waving their flags and cheering, it's quite something to see. We're glad we could bring it to Canada.
Well, even during my time at the palace, never witnessed anything quite like this before. I've had many meetings in that room behind the balcony, but never actually on the balcony.
Oh, he's turned around to give them a wave. He knew that's what they wanted.
Well, I bet they must be so relieved. Now. And they will go on now and do all of the official photography, which we'll probably start seeing emerge from tomorrow, I would have thought.
Or tonight, now that we have the age of Twitter. I mean,
well, possibly. I mean, you know,
media.
but the official portraits, you know, they're not snapshots. They'll need properly kind of, you know, looking at. It's kind of. But I think the pictures people have just taken now of that balcony shot from here will, you know, they'll go in their own sort of virtual scrapbooks.
It's history, really. History here.
It's totally history.
Where you are, Omar.
Anne-Marie, forgive me, I was having a little bit of trouble hearing you because of these bells at the Abbey that keep going.
Yes.
Not sure when they're going to stop. They are beautiful, but they have been going on for some time, which is making it a little bit tough to hear. But it is adding such a
sense of occasion.
A sense of occasion to the scene. That's beautifully put. Together with the band and the helicopters and the red arrows and also the people spontaneously singing "God Save the King" in the streets. I can only imagine what it is like right now from the King's vantage point on the balcony. And the Queen. I mean, to see this sea of humanity. We see the perspective from street level. He sees it from the balcony. And it's got to be reassuring for him.
It's got to be. To see all those people out in force to wish him well, to spontaneously sing God Save the King. And there was fears that perhaps there wouldn't be that many people that came out, that the streets would be empty. And it certainly hasn't been that. I mean, the Mall around Buckingham Palace is still packed. People exiting now because the royals have gone inside. The fly past is over. Definitely, he will feel reassured that people took their time to come out in this weather and wish him well.
It looks like they have come back out again on the balcony.
It does, absolutely.
An encore, so to speak, a royal
An encore, absolutely. Now this is when they start singing Katy Perry's Firework. It's right now. Yeah. It's lovely to see the two of them together like that, isn't it? I think that people will really appreciate that.
And he seems genuinely touched, happy, and moved.
He does, he does. He looks more relaxed now than he did at Westminster Abbey, and quite rightly so as well. Like, a huge occasion, and it's definitely very emotional in the church with all that weight of history. And now, you know, having those moments with the grandchildren and his step-grandchildren, it's a bit more relaxed. I mean, as relaxed as you can be wearing the imperial state crown and how many robes. But yeah.
I'm sure now there's a gigantic exhale for both of them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sure they're going to have a little sherry and possibly a lie down. It's been a long day for them.
A long day and a long week.
A hugely long week. But don't forget, it's not over. We have the coronation concert tomorrow. Queen Camilla is due to do a walkabout tomorrow as well. And the big help out in Manu, we expect to see them out and about for that as well. So it isn't quite over yet, but the main part, the ceremonial part, the very emotional part is over for them. So I'm sure they will have an exhale, some time for family for the rest of the day, and also to dry off.
We know that Queen Elizabeth spent a lot of time at Balmoral in the summer.
Yes.
Do you expect King Charles to do the same?
Yes, I think we can expect him to go there when the festivities are all over, potentially towards the end of next week, to spend some time there, you know, as King and Queen, getting used to their new titles, getting this next phase of their life. I also read this week that the King is interested in taking a trip to India, the first possible opportunity, so it will be about planning their first state visit. Now they have been coronated, what's next for them? Absolutely.
Let's go back now to Joy Malbon in Hyde Park, who has been with the crowds who have been watching this entire day on gigantic screens and putting up with, as we've been talking about, weather that has been a little bit frustrating at times all through the day. Joy, what are the spirits like where you are?
Hey Omar, I am here with an amazing couple here. Back when the Queen died, when Queen Elizabeth died 8 months ago, Ron, Kate, Richard, and Lizzie all met up, and they decided they would only do royal events together. They have suffered through the rain here, and I just want to ask them all what their favorite moment was. Ron, what was it for you?
There are two, really. The first one is obviously the seating of the crown, but it's little Prince George, absolute diamond. That boy is a star, he really is.
Oh, I totally agree with you too. And what about you, Kate? What moment affected you?
I think I was quite emotional when the service was happening in Westminster Abbey and seeing everybody take up their positions, but then also the parade. Seeing all of our amazing military men and women, just amazing. Really proud to be British.
And you?
I just saying what Ron reiterated, saying the crowning of the King and just what England, Britain do great. Just all the guards and that marching along the Mall and everything. I think it's fantastic.
You must be so proud, Lizzie. I mean, you know, I look at this ceremony and it's like, wow, so many spectacular moments. What was it for you?
I mean, it's all fantastic. I mean, the weather let us down, but that doesn't let our spirits down, does it? For me, I just love watching the next generation. I think, you know, they have got to be absorbing this. These are the guys of the future, and I think it's just wonderful for us to witness them. You know, I loved it, loved them.
And it almost felt like Britain needed a party. Even though it rained, they needed a party. What do you think?
We don't need a reason to party. We're British. It doesn't matter if it's raining, it's not going to stop us.
But it's brilliant to all come together, like you say. People from all over the world celebrating British stuff. Now that we can, now we're out of the pandemic, and yeah, it's all been really good.
And what's it like to have a new king? I know he's king, but officially crowned, and seeing those jewels.
It's absolutely, it's amazing, firstly, but I think, we have waited so long for him. I think he's had the best apprenticeship anyone in history could ever have had. He will absolutely do a brilliant job. I won't hear one bad word against him at all. Brilliant.
Now, did you guys all say, God save the...
God save the King!
You do have to get used to it a bit.
You do have to get used to it, that's true.
I've spent my whole life serving the Queen, go through the forces, and now to have to change that and go, it's not the Queen, it's the King. A little bit emotional. We are there where we are.
It is really about
stay safe.
Thank you all so much. I love that story. Omar, people here are celebrating their heritage. It is a point of pride. So many Union Jacks, and even though it rained, well, what the heck? There's a new king.
Strong representation and a huge effort to show the diversity of faith within Britain.
Thank you, Joy Melvin in Hyde Park. For so many people today, such a representation or a reflection of what it means to be British. And inside the Abbey for the coronation service, I mean, it was a ceremony that was steeped in tradition, it was steeped in history.
Absolutely, yeah.
But as Sally was talking about earlier, there were some key differences. And it's incredible to think that in 2023 it would take this long to have these kinds of differences. But the fact that female clergy were given the prominence that they were, the fact that female composers were included, it has taken a very long time for this to happen, but it did happen today.
It did happen. One thing the royal family are not good at is modernization. Not good at modernization. And I think King Charles is very aware of that and therefore made the effort that this coronation, as steeped in history as it was with the anointing and the oil and everything else, was modernized. I mean, you have Penny Mordaunt, who was front and centre, as I think her title is Lord Chancellor of the Privy Council. And she was almost in the coronation as much as King Charles was. As a woman, that's an incredible place for her to be. Yes, we had female clergy, we had an absolutely incredible South African opera singer as well. It was great to see women and people of colour as part of this ceremony. We just have to hope that it doesn't come across as tokenism, and actually this is real effort on behalf of King Charles III to be much more inclusive and much more modern. I hope people can hear me behind. I mean, as well as the bells, let's just let people know, as well as the bells,
now
where we are in West, yes, they are sweeping, literally cleaning the streets, which are already pretty clean because it has been raining. And this is when actually a lot of the security barriers will start coming down. Shops that are closed in the area can now open, and they're giving Westminster a good clean-up. Not that it needed one, but thanks.
And this happening very quickly. You talked a little bit about representation, about diversity, and we saw a significant amount of that, especially around the time when the King's regalia was presented to him as well, right? We saw people of various different faiths, Muslims, Sikhs, Jews, come together and be part of the service. And we know that building bridges with other faith communities has been important to then Prince Charles, now King. He's made that outreach throughout the course of his 70-plus years.
So much so that in the service, the words are supposed to be, he's supposed to be described as defender of the faith, but he changed it to defender of faith. So that could include any faith. So it could include Islam, Judaism, as well as him being the head of the Church of England. It was really important to him that was part of the remit, because this is a country that's not just made up of Christians, that it has many different faiths and many different people of those faiths in the country and represented in the service. So a real effort was made to do that.
Again, incredible images from here in London, but we are going to take you to our capital, the Canadian capital in Ottawa, where another official ceremony is about to get started in honor of this day, the King's coronation. CTV's Vashi Kapelos joins me now, and I can tell you, Vashi, here it is incredible to be here and witness this in person along with so many thousands of others. We know that many Canadians have come here. We know that members of the RCMP musical ride were part of that coronation as it left Westminster Abbey. And there will be special ways to mark that in Ottawa as well.
Yeah, there certainly will be, Omar. I've been glued to your coverage, so I can only imagine how amazing it is to be there. I'm actually here at Rideau Hall in Ottawa. This is, of course, the Governor General's residence in the capital city. It's open to the public for the weekend to mark the coronation, and in fact, there will be musical performances and a ton of opportunities to learn about the crown. But you're absolutely right. In a few minutes' time, actually, a ceremony to mark the coronation will happen here in this city. I want to bring in my colleague, CTV's royal commentator, Richard Berthelsen, to talk a little bit about that. Just before we tee up what Canadians can expect here in Ottawa, tell me a bit about what stuck out for you so far here, because it really lends itself to what we can expect next hour.
Yeah, it was a real clash today between modernity and the ancient rites of a coronation. And we saw it kind of dragged into the 21st century. It still has those familiar aspects which come from a time long ago. I mean, that ceremony dates from 1066. But it had this real moment of modernity with the diversity of people who played the various roles, female priests performing functions which would have been unheard of in 1953. And, you know, here we had a Hindu prime minister in the United Kingdom, a Muslim Scottish first minister, and a real diversity in the whole congregation. I thought the music was sensational, the flowers amazing, and just the whole color and pageantry of it was simply sensational.
And I wanted to touch base on that because it does, as I said, lend itself to what we can expect at the Canadian ceremony. There is a real focus on diversity, on inclusion, just looking through some of the performers, for example, and the guests as well. We've got the CAF Central Band from the Canadian Armed Forces. Albert Dumas will be one of the earliest speakers. He's an Algonquin spiritual advisor. And then we're going to hear from the Eagle River Singers as well. Lots of the themes throughout that hour, very much reflective of two major priorities for the King. The environment and reconciliation with Indigenous people.
That's right. I mean, I think the Canadian ceremony really reflects where we are at the moment. And if the Crown is going to be a vital institution in Canada, in the Canadian parliamentary democracy going forward, it has to address those points and it has to bring people together. And this ceremony today does, with a strong Indigenous component right at the start, but it also brings people from various different diverse groups. And it also has some very important announcements about Crown-related things in Canada.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about those announcements in a second. I just want to let people know that, you know, because the Prime Minister is, of course, in England in the UK for the coronation there, Minister LeBlanc will kind of be one of the top delegates who will be speaking here. Dominic LeBlanc, he's the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister. You've got two former Governors General attending as well, the Right Honourable Michaëlle Jean and the Right Honourable David Johnston, and then the Speakers of the House and the Senate. That's kind of the VIP list at this point. We've been watching to see who else arrives. You mentioned the three big announcements. Let's hear about those.
Yeah, many Canadians have kind of been wondering when they're going to start to see the King reflected on some of the Canadian aspects of life that we know. We're going to hear about a postage stamp today with a new portrait of the King, a new commemorative coin, and the government is also announcing a specially designed crown for use in Canada that really reflects Canadian symbols and also has a strong degree of connection with Indigenous symbology. So there's those three aspects, and I think, you know, we're going to start to see now that we've been through this very formal coronation, more and more start to be reflected in terms of the Canadian governance, because this was really the official start of the new reign.
Yeah, I think we're also curious to see exactly how this new king is reflected in Canadian society and with those tangible symbols as well. Richard, thanks so much. I know you'll be with us throughout that ceremony. Omar, I'll throw things back to you from Ottawa.
All right, Vashti, we'll talk to you in just a few minutes, and let's take it back over to Anne-Marie Medawake and Sally Osman at Buckingham Palace. And Anne-Marie, this is where the page officially turns, and people will be wondering now what King Charles's reign will be like and how it will be defined.
The Carolean era. Do I have that right? Is that what it's called?
That's what it's called. That's what it's called. I think it'd be defined a lot by how he defined his work as Prince of Wales in some respects. You know, it will be defined by, as we heard in the service, so, you know, it'll be defined by duty and service. He recommitted the Queen's famous words when she was 21. He rededicated that when she died. So I think we'll see a lot of service. We'll also see, I think, because of the relationship between the King and the Queen, you know, a great degree of humour you know, a great degree of enjoyment, of warmth, and I think that will be fantastic. They'll have their own separate pieces of work to pursue. He obviously has all his official duties. She's got some very interesting patronages, whether it's literacy, sexual violence, domestic violence, gender equality we talked about earlier, some medical osteoporosis. You know, she's got some very interesting patronages and has committed a lot of time to them over recent years and will continue to do so alongside her role as Queen.
We were listening to Joy Malbon speak with people in the park about the moments that will stay with them. Mm-hmm. What moments will stay with you?
Oh, I think it's that moment of the anointing. Even though we don't actually see it, you get the sense of it. And I think seeing what's been so interesting for me is, you know, having seen the regalia in the Jewel House at the Tower of London, having seen the carriages in the Mews, to suddenly see everything come to life and you see its real purpose has just been phenomenal. And I think there's little sort of interactions between the Queen and the King when she came up to be enthroned were really warm. The Prince William moment, the music, it's the music that will really stay with me, and I know it will stay with him as well, with the King, because, you know, music is a very important part of his life. So lots of phenomenal, historic, lovely moments.
And I was so happy to share them with you. And what people at home don't know is that Sally and I had a little bit of tea and shortbread, Omar, when we were watching the King being crowned.
That sounds delicious, and you're making me very hungry. I'll try to grab a snack in just a few moments. Anne-Marie, Sally, thank you both so much. We've just got about 30 seconds left. Afia, your final thoughts. What was your most powerful moment or profound moment?
I mean, for me, seeing Prince William, the Prince of Wales, kneeling in front of his father was incredibly powerful. What an incredibly British coronation. It rained all day, and we did pomp and pageantry at its absolute best.
A spectacular celebration. Afia, thanks so much. So, Charles III is crowned king. Camilla is crowned queen in the biggest ceremonial event this country has seen in 7 decades. A sumptuous show of pomp and pageantry and a tradition dating back 1,000 years. And today was rooted in history, but it was also the monarchy's attempt to be more forward-looking. We'll see how the new king does and claim his place on the world stage. I want to thank our guests today, Afia Hagen, Sally Osman, and our entire team of correspondents and producers and technicians here in the UK and in Canada. It has been an early start, and we will have complete coverage of today's events on CTV National News tonight and at ctvnews.ca. We'll have continuing coverage of the coronation with the national ceremony in Ottawa, live on News Channel and CP24 if you are in Toronto in just a few moments' time. But for now, for all of us here in London and back in our national newsroom, thank you for watching, and we'll leave you now with some live pictures from London on this momentous day in history, the first coronation in 70 years of King Charles and now Queen Camilla. A Canadian ceremony in honor of King Charles III is just getting underway after the historic proceedings here in London. We continue our coverage of the coronation now from Ottawa with CTV's Vassy Kapelos. Vassy.
Hi, Omar. Thanks so much. I'm here at Rideau Hall, where the Governor General normally lives. She's in London right now. She is, of course, the representative of the King in Canada. Just down the street from where I am, though, right across from Parliament Hill. That Canadian ceremony that Omar referenced is just about to get underway. My colleague, CTV's Mike Le Couteur, is outside the doors there as attendants get seated. Mike, tell me a bit about what we can expect in the next hour.
Yeah, this whole ceremony really has these sort of modern touches, Vassy, and yes, there will be that sort of pomp and ceremony that we expect of something of this nature, but also when you consider that one of the opening remarks will be from Albert Dumont, who is the Ottawa Poet Laureate, also from Kitigan, Zibi, Anishinaabe. And from what we were understanding is that his first version of the text that he was expected to read was actually rejected by Canadian Heritage, the department there, and they asked him to redo it and to take a second look at it. So it'll be interesting to see what that first draft was actually all about. We also know that he was somebody who had been at that ceremony in honor of Queen Elizabeth II on her passing. And so this is going to be one of those ceremonies where there'll be a number of speeches, a number of songs as well, and of course having that Indigenous aspect to it as well, something that is very key, not only here in Canada, but something that we know that King Charles III himself is key on making sure is part of these types of ceremonies. We know that when he did come to Canada, he was talking about that type of reconciliation, no apology, as we know, to the people, the Indigenous people of Canada, but definitely trying to continue to walk that road of reconciliation. So we're expecting aspects of that. And Dominic LeBlanc, who of course will be the representative that you had said earlier on today for the government speaking here, he will also give a speech, and it'll be interesting to see the different type of personal views he will give, because as we know, he has met King Charles III when he was Prince Charles, and he'll be, I'm sure, peppering in some of those anecdotes in that speech, Vassy.
Certainly, Mike. Yeah, I think that's safe to say we can expect that. Mike Le Couteur, just outside of the building where the Canadian ceremony is just about to get underway. I'm also joined by CTV's royal commentator, Richard Berthelsen. Mike was touching on some of the big challenges the monarchy faces in Canada. I'm wondering, before we get to that, though, and we will see that reflected certainly throughout the ceremony, if you can just touch on why it's a big deal that the coronation be celebrated here in Canada, why we're having this very official ceremony full of, pomp and circumstance and ceremony. Why is that important? What the ties between the monarchy and this country?
Well, Vassy, we're here at the King's official residence, effectively, in Canada, Rideau Hall. And of course, he's been here many times. The Queen herself stayed here many times as well. And this building behind us, it represents the authority of the state. And that where we vest in Canada in a monarchy. In a parliamentary democracy, you need an umpire of some kind to kind of sometimes negotiate between the parties or put the final stamp of approval on things. And that's the role that the King plays, or more on a daily basis here, the Governor General of Canada. And Canada chose to be a constitutional monarchy when we became a confederation, and we recommitted to that in 1982 when the Constitution was patriated. And of course, a very significant change was put in our Constitution then, which was that unanimous consent would be required to change that. So the monarchy is an essential part of our parliamentary democracy in Canada. It goes back a long way, and it's ingrained in everything we do, particularly with the relationship with Indigenous peoples. The Crown Indigenous relationship is very important. In fact, it's the name of the department that administers that now for the government, and that is going to be one of the key challenges that this King is going to face as we move into an era of reconciliation.
And I mean, that relationship certainly has been a big challenge, and it continues to be. Though, I will say, we've spoken to so many Indigenous leaders who are there, for example, in England, who have been there for the coronation, with which he took an audience, and they left saying, and they issued a statement to this effect, that they felt it was more than symbolism.
That's right. Very interesting who the King chose to meet this past week in London. Let's face it, one of the busiest, most stressful weeks of his life, something he's been preparing for his whole life, 70 years or more. And yet, one of those audiences was with the Canadian Indigenous leadership, I think largely at the behest of the Governor General, who herself is seen as an Indigenous leader, certainly for the Inuit in Canada. very significant that he would do that and recalibrate. We've also seen some very important statements this week from Perry Bellegarde, the former national chief of the Indigenous Peoples of Canada, and he also is an extremely close, has a close relationship with the Prince, or now the King, and the King has been working through this issue for a long time in terms of how he might approach this. And I think this is one of the things we may see in this reign is some kind of more direct involvement in the King and reconciliation.
The ceremony itself, which is we're about to go to, features a number of performances from various singers, various groups, various musical sort of orchestrations. But it also features a number of speakers. We're going to hear from Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who's representing the government here, as well as some other ministers. And we will see there present former Governors General as well, Michaëlle Jean, the Right Honourable Michaëlle Jean, and the Right Honourable David Johnston. Tell me a bit about what you're looking ahead to in this ceremony.
Well, I think we're going to be very interested to see what words have been chosen by the Indigenous elder who is going to speak at this ceremony, because they were quite hard-hitting at the Queen's funeral last September. And, you know, we can't sugarcoat some of the issues in the relationship, and I don't think that will be the case today. At the same time, we're going to see a diversity of performances, the diversity which we know to be modern Canada, and the government's going to take the opportunity, I think, today to make some big announcements about symbolism and things that we've been kind of wondering and expecting. We'd start to see the King and the new reign, his symbol, the Charles 3R, and also the use of the crown in Canada. So there'll be some very interesting announcements, and we'll see how those roll out in the weeks ahead.
Why or why not are those important? Like, why are the symbols of the crown in this country something you're looking at?
Well, I think Canada has a really rich heraldic symbolic history. You know, we look at our coat of arms and we see our history in terms of the English and French. Maybe we wonder why other groups are not there now. Even on our Arms of Canada, our motto, Amarias Gamari, from sea unto sea. These symbols have all worked into our national consciousness. People don't even realize them. They see a provincial flag or a provincial coat of arms and they immediately associate with those things. The King is part of that, and when we have a new reign, the King chooses a different crown that he uses, and those symbols will appear on RCMP uniforms, on the Canadian Forces uniforms, on all of the things. So there'll be something that's part of the lexicon and vocabulary of daily life in Canada.
Okay, Richard, stand by. We're going to be watching the ceremony. I'm going to head right over to that ceremony. We'll take a listen in live.
I don't want to go all too technical.
Merci à Monsieur Dumont et aux Eagle River Singers pour ce moment tout en émotion. Il me fait maintenant plaisir d'inviter Farah Alibé, ingénieure en aérospatiale et championne de l'engagement bénévole,
volunteerism,
la parole.
to give an
Farah
address.
Alibé.
Farah Alibé.
Bonjour.
Good morning.
Je voulais commencer mon allocution
I wanted to
pour vous
start my
remercier,
speech
chers
by
Canadiens,
thanking
de
you, fellow
m'avoir invité à
Canadians,
parler
for
aujourd'hui.
having invited me to
En tant
speak
que
today.
femme, enfant
Being a
d'immigrants
woman,
d'origine indienne,
a daughter of immigrants of Indian descent, and a queer person, these privileged spaces have not always been open to people like me. The world is evolving, becoming more inclusive, and we are continuing to learn from the more difficult parts of our history. It is therefore with optimism and humility that I have come to share this moment with you.
One of the major themes evoked on the occasion of this coronation is that of community and volunteering, values that are dear to my heart and that of my family. Sometimes these concepts can seem to be bigger than ourselves and to require significant investments in time and money. Yet, what I can say from experience is that small acts of kindness and empathy can change a person's trajectory and literally help them reach the stars.
When my mother's family immigrated to Canada in the 70s, fleeing Madagascar, the country of their birth, due to civil unrest, they felt completely out of place. People spoke in a strange accent, crystallized frozen water fell from the sky, and sub-zero weather seemed to be the norm for months on end. As they learned to adapt to this new reality, in a city where immigrants of color were still very rare, it was the individuals around them who welcomed them with open arms and helped them integrate into the country that they now called home. Whether it was the teachers who took the time to help my mother and her siblings close the gap in their academics, the community who came to my grandfather's restaurant, or Mr. and Mrs. LeBlanc, my family's neighbors, who helped them learn how to shovel their driveway and change out their summer tires in preparation for their first winter in Quebec. It is these people, this community, that are the reason my family has been able to prosper and thrive in Canada.
Growing up, our home life wasn't full of luxuries. Despite this, my parents instilled in my brother and I the core values of duty and service. They always told us, take what you need, live comfortably, of course, but that which you have in excess, be generous with. It is in fact those who have the least who often give the most. Generosity can have various forms, whether it be in the shape of material goods, time, expertise, mentorship, the possibilities are endless. My parents encouraged my brother and I to acknowledge the privileges that we had and to be involved in our community by helping others in the best way we could. They led by example, and they still do, be it by helping new immigrant families to integrate. I can't tell you how many pictures I get from my mom of her new grandchildren freshly welcomed into her inner circle. By running errands for elderly relatives, or simply by dropping off a meal to a friend going through a tough time. Service was never a chore to us, but rather part of our DNA. It simply just was our way of giving back in thanks for all the help that had been received in our lives and those of our ancestors. Along the way, I experienced firsthand the power that individuals can have in the lives of others. I've had exceptional educators who went far above and beyond their duties to make sure that I would not only succeed and flourish, but that I would be encouraged to follow the career of my dreams in aerospace engineering, despite all the other obstacles that were in the way. There were friends and their families that made me feel welcomed and loved when I was suffering from bullying and racism. There have also been countless mentors and colleagues who have helped me prepare for interviews and presentations, who encouraged me to apply for positions I didn't think I deserved, or who listened when I was struggling as one of the very few women in my field. All these people, each individual, through their acts of kindness, led me to where I am today.
Now that I've charted my own path, I consciously, every day, choose to take time to give back to the community that surrounds me by sharing the gifts that were nurtured in me by others. I recognize that the future is built by all of us, working together, supporting each other, and sharing. This concept of service and community isn't unique to my family. It is one that is shared across Canada and the Commonwealth. It is a value that defines us as a people. So today, I invite you to take a moment to acknowledge the community that had a hand in raising you and in the journey you've taken to be here. I encourage you to be empathetic to those around you and to take a small break from your busy lives to lend a hand to a person you might not normally have taken the time to help. The impact that you might have is no doubt greater than you can imagine. Who knows? Maybe someday you'll receive the greatest gift of all in return, a message or a note that starts with, "Because of the time you took to help me, I too was able to achieve my dream. Thank you."
Thank you, Farah, for those inspiring words. I would like to now invite singer-songwriter Florence K. to interpret her song Vol de Nuit, which celebrates new beginnings and expresses a heartfelt hope for a brighter future.
The piano doesn't seem to be on. There we go. Lorsque la nuit s'apprête à décider ce qu'elle fera de nous, un vol de nuit, un instant, une journée, un horizon qui s'ouvre à nos pieds. Lorsqu'on a pensé à tout ce qu'il fallait pour faire de ce monde un rêve éveillé, mais je crois qu'il n'en tient qu'à nous de regarder devant, de nous tenir debout, pour qu'enfin les enfants de demain soient libres de choisir leur propre chemin. Oh mon amour, la flamme qui brillera viendra du nord, tel un vol de nuit. Oh mon amour, l'étoile qui scintillera viendra du nord, tel un vol de nuit. Lorsque le jour s'apprête à nous montrer ce que la nuit a fait de nous, un vol de nuit, un instant, une journée, un océan de possibilités. Lorsqu'on a tracé tout ce qu'il fallait pour faire de ce rêve un monde éveillé, et je crois qu'il n'en tient qu'à nous de poser un regard sur ce qu'il faut changer pour qu'enfin les vents, les alizés soufflent dans les voiles de notre liberté. Oh mon
Merci, Florence.
Thank you, Florence, for that wonderful performance. It is now my pleasure to welcome writer, performer, and poet Sabrina Benaim, who will recite a poem she wrote to mark this occasion. Entitled, To a Dreamer in a Modern World, this work is an ode to the environment.
My hand points to a cloud, and you see a harvest of rainwater. Rivers fed into lakes, feeding to the animals like us, eating what comes from the soil washed clean. A backyard garden abundant, corn, garlic, and tomato, sweet potato, asparagus. You see a pot run wild with parsley, another wild with mint, a bed of primrose, a healthy buzz of bees, tree trunk, to bird's nest in branch, to blossom, to fruit, fallen or plucked, compost or collected and sold for a fair price at the market where you will buy it and bring it home for dessert, served on your hand-carved, locally made wooden table, your glass of wine poured half full. This does not mean you don't see the sky, the plumes of pollution. You are doing what you can. You buy LED light bulbs. You drive a hybrid car. Donate clothes. Don't let the tap run while brushing your teeth. You don't turn on unnecessary lights. You bike in the spring and summer, walk when you can, when the forecast doesn't call for rain. You understand we are also solar powered. There is an intricate chain holding everything here together. Sun to earth and moon to sea. Sun to cloud and cloud to rain to plant, and plant to animal to animal to animal, to human to plant, to human to animal, to human to human. We are all equal part of this planet. You are ocean. Ocean is preserved rainforest, is untapped oil reserve, is coal mine. You are mountain. You are seabed. And the green grass is the cow. And the cow is healthy, grazing in peace under a setting sun. You are a rising sun. You are a dreamer in a modern world. I showed you a cloud and you saw the future. Growth, a coronation of possibility. You reach up and you bring down my hand, hold it in yours, and begin to walk with me, beside me. You say, come on, together, let's leave this place better than we found it.
Merci beaucoup, Sabrina.
Thank you, Sabrina.
I would now like to invite the Minister of Public Services and Procurement, the Honourable Helena Jaczyk, and Mary LeMay, President and CEO of the Royal Canadian Mint, to come to the stage for the first of several special unveilings marking the coronation of the new monarch and the change of reign.
La monnaie royale canadienne.
The Royal Canadian Mint has long played a central role in celebrating Canada's royal traditions. From when Canada's very first commemorative silver dollar was issued in 1935 to celebrate the Silver Jubilee of King George V, to royal weddings, to the late Queen Elizabeth II's jubilees, Canada's royal family has been the subject of some of the Mint's most popular and historic collector coins. Today, the Mint is launching the His Majesty King Charles III Coronation Suite, which consists of 2 fine silver and 2 pure gold coins. Every coin in this collection features an engraving of His Majesty's royal cipher. I would now invite Minister Jaczyk and Ms. LeMay to unveil one of the silver coins.
Additionally, the government has announced today that the Royal Canadian Mint will design and place an effigy of His Majesty King Charles III on Canadian circulation coins. An effigy of the reigning monarch has appeared on Canadian coins since the Mint first started production of coins in 1908. Thank you, Ms. Lemaire. I would now like to invite Minister Jazyk to come to the podium, and Joanne Polak, Senior Vice President, Corporate and Employee Communications at Canada Post, to come to the stage for another special unveiling.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel and Don. And I'd also like to thank all of the artists for their wonderful performances. Bonjour à tous, distinguished guests. On behalf of the Government of Canada and as the Minister responsible for Canada Post, it's a pleasure to be here today and to unveil the first Canadian stamp featuring His Majesty King Charles III. The coronation of a new monarch is a momentous occasion for Canadians and people throughout the Commonwealth, and it's only fitting that it be celebrated on a Canadian stamp, continuing a long-standing tradition. For more than 170 years, Canada Post has been issuing stamps depicting the Canadian sovereign. Cette tradition qui
It's a tradition that dates back to 1851, when a pre-Confederation stamp was issued featuring Queen Victoria. This stamp features a portrait of His Majesty, who at the time was the Prince of Wales. The photo was taken by photographer Alan Shawcross, and the stamp was designed by Montreal-based design firm Paprika.
Stamp were chosen following an extensive review and selection process involving an independent stamp advisory committee. The committee guided the designers on the selection of images and creation of the stamp and the official first day cover collectible envelope. The new stamp is a wonderful way to commemorate the historic moment in Canadian history. Before we unveil the stamp, I want to share a quote from His Majesty during the 1996 Royal Tour, one of the many trips he's made to Canada over the last 50-plus years. It's a quote that is included on the back of the stamp booklet and official first day cover. Every time I come to Canada, a little more of Canada seeps into my bloodstream, and from there, straight to the heart. And with that, let's now unveil the stamp. J'invite maintenant mon collègue.
I now invite my colleague, the Honourable Bill Blair, President of the King's Privy Council for Canada and Minister of Emergency Preparedness, and Sami Khalid, Chief Herald of Canada, to come on stage for the next unveilings. Yes, Bill Blair.
Bon matin, tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. Today is a momentous day for Canada as we celebrate the coronation of His Majesty King Charles III. And before I begin, I'd like to thank Albert Dumont and the Eagle Singers for being with us here today and for welcoming us so warmly on the traditional territory. The Crown of Canada is part of our national identity. It is a fundamental element of our system of government, and it contributes to a sense of unity and pride among all Canadians. It is also in constant evolution, and today marks the beginning of a new chapter in Canadian history. King Charles has a long and fruitful relationship with our country. Some Canadians will remember the first time that he came to Canada as a young man in 1970 to mark the centennial of the creation of the Northwest Territories and Manitoba's entry into Confederation. And since then, King Charles has been to Canada 18 times. He has visited every province and every territory. And on his most recent tour with the Queen Consort in 2022, King Charles met with entrepreneurs in Newfoundland and Labrador. He visited Deta, a Dene Nation, First Nation in the Northwest Territories, to discuss the impact of climate change in our northern communities. And he spoke to students, parents, and teachers about the importance of literacy at an elementary school in Vanier, right here in Ottawa. The King shares many of the values that we hold dear as Canadians. He believes in the importance of giving back to our communities, empowering youth to reach their full potential, protecting the environment, championing the arts, and supporting members of the Canadian Armed Forces, as well as celebrating our diversity. Today is a chance for Canadians from coast to coast to coast to come together in their communities to celebrate these shared values. And as the King himself has said, it is a day to look to the future, to see how we can keep working together to build a better Canada, a better Commonwealth, and a better world. Our royal symbols must be inclusive, to unite us as Canadians, and they must also be unique, to distinguish us in the world. One of the strengths of our constitutional monarchy is its ability to adapt. We have come a long way since 1867, and our symbols have changed to reflect this development. For example, in 1921, King George V gave us our coat of arms, and in 1965, Queen Elizabeth II proclaimed our national flag. King Charles has continued this long tradition, and he has approved new Canadian symbols. The Sovereign's flag, designed by the Canadian Heraldic Authority, is a banner of the Royal Arms of Canada. It is a rectangular representation of the coat of arms of Canada, featuring maple leafs and royal emblems of the United Kingdom and France. The flag emphasizes the Royal Arms of Canada, and they are also the arms of the Monarch of Canada, and will serve all future sovereigns. This distinguishing flag will be used to indicate the King's presence in Canada. It is now my great pleasure to invite Dr. Sami Khalid, the Chief Herald of Canada, as well as Donald Booth, Canada's Secretary to the King, to unveil the King's new flag. Gentlemen. The King has also approved a new Canadian crown, which is designed by the Canadian Heraldic Authority and that represents the symbols of our past, our present, and our future. The new design incorporates uniquely Canadian elements, including stylized maple leafs and a wavy blue line representing our lands and our waterways. It also includes a nod to Indigenous teachings about the importance of and connection to water and the land. And most importantly, for the first time in our history, it is uniquely Canadian. I would now invite Dr. Khalid and Mr. Booth to unveil the Canadian Royal Crown. Excellent. By renewing emblems like the flag and the Royal Crown, we are marking the next step in His Majesty's long and committed relationship with Canada. We are affirming our Canadian identity and sovereignty in the framework of this time-honored tradition. These new emblems are stable and perpetual symbols of the Canadian monarchy in Canada. From today, they will represent Canada into the future. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Khalid and Mr. Booth, and it's my great honor to invite my colleague, Dominic LeBlanc, Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, to the stage.
Excellences, Messieurs les
Your Excellencies, Speakers of the Senate and House of Commons,
my colleagues in the House of Commons, distingués invités, distinguished guests. C'est un plaisir d'être parmi vous ce matin.
It is my pleasure to be with you today on this day of the coronation of our sovereign, His Majesty, King Charles III. I would like to thank my colleagues, Minister Blair and Dr. Khalid, for these unveilings which mark the change of reign and the coronation of our new monarch.
Has a long and rich relationship with the Crown. From our beginnings as a French colony to today, the monarchy has been an integral part of our institutions and our identity. The coronation of a sovereign is a high watermark in that relationship. It's an occasion we had not witnessed since 1953, when our country was still emerging from the Second World War and when we were coming to terms as a country into our own as a country in terms of a nation of equals. It would be more than 30 years before Canada achieved full independence from the United Kingdom with the repatriation of Canada's Constitution. Millions of Canadians are witnessing the coronation of Canada's sovereign for the first time in a country that is radically different from the one that witnessed the last coronation. But as Canada evolves, so do its institutions, and so does the monarchy. Today, we will witness an event steeped in the traditions dating back to the Middle Ages. But tradition is not an impediment to modernity. By looking to the past, we can better understand our present and witness how we have progressed as a nation. It enables us to look to the future with optimism. Tradition grounds us, offers us a sense of belonging. That is what the Crown embodies: stability and reassurance. La Couronne a également.
The Crown also has a long tradition of service in our armed forces, in our communities, and among the most vulnerable. Many governors general have made service to others a defining feature of their mandates. His Majesty himself, when he was still Prince of Wales, led the Prince's Trust, a charitable organization which works with disadvantaged youth and promotes entrepreneurship among veterans. Through honors such as the Order of Canada, the Sovereign's Medal for Volunteers, and the Jubilee Medals, the Crown highlights the contributions of Canadians who have displayed extraordinary service to their country. Such commemorative medals have often been created to mark days of national and royal celebration, a tradition which goes all the way back to Confederation. As such, in honor of the coronation of His Majesty King Charles III, the Government of Canada will award 30,000 coronation medals to Canadians who have made important contributions to Canada, a province, a territory, a region, or a community, or who have honored Canada through acts performed abroad.
Non-partisan nature of Canada's honors make them a model for the world. Many of the world's most successful democracies are constitutional monarchies, and Canada is a prime example of that. From a relatively obscure dominion of a few million people to one of the world's largest economies In just over 150 years, Canada's path has indeed been remarkable. If we are here today, it is because of our institutions, including the Crown, institutions that are stronger. As Canadians and people around the Commonwealth gather to celebrate the coronation of King Charles III, let us be inspired by the values of service embodied by the Crown. Et il me fait maintenant énormément plaisir.
It is now my pleasure to invite my colleague Goody Hutchings, Minister of Rural Economic Development, to the podium to introduce the next musical performance. Thank you.
Merci, Minister LeBlanc.
Thank you, Minister LeBlanc. Greetings.
What a pleasure it is to be here today. And last year in St. John's, I was so honored to welcome His Majesty and the Queen Consort as they began their royal tour in honor of Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee. It was an exciting day for Canadians and especially for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador as we celebrated and showcased the many facets of our province's colorful, vibrant, and deep-rooted cultures and traditions. So once again, offering a glimpse into this lifestyle, it's my pleasure to introduce In Echo, a diverse and energetic traditional music group based out of another island, Prince Edward Island, to perform In the Nick of Time. Enjoy.
Merci, Madame la Ministre, et merci.
Thank you, Minister. And thank you, In Echo, for that dynamic performance. To highlight the King's connection to the Canadian Armed Forces, the Central Band of the Canadian Armed Forces Serenade of Strings will perform the Royal Anthem.
Performed by the Central Band of the Canadian Armed Forces Serenade of Strings. It will be followed by the singing of our national anthem. It will be performed by the Ottawa Regional Youth Choir, an artistic organization that creates a supportive environment for dedicated and musically curious youth.
De 21 coups de canon tirés depuis la colline du Parlement.
The ceremony will conclude with a 21-gun salute fired from Hill by the 30th Field Artillery Regiment of the Royal Canadian Artillery. We thank you once again for your attendance today.
And a 21-gun salute brings to an end the Canadian ceremony here in Ottawa to mark the coronation of King Charles. I'm Vashi Kapelos in our nation's capital. I'm here with CTV's royal commentator Richard Berthelsen. Pardon me. Richard, a really remarkable ceremony denoted by poetry, by song, by some very special speeches as well. What stuck out to you?
Well, the diversity of Canada really comes out, just as we saw diversity of a type at the coronation earlier this morning. We see the diversity of Canada with the use of different languages, young people, people from the LGBT community, as well as Indigenous people. So that's really what the Crown is about, is uniting, but also some very significant announcements by the government today.
Let's talk about those, because three big takeaways for people who are watching right now, but how this will kind of change our daily lives. And the first is a new coin.
That's right. We saw the commemorative coin design, which has the King's cipher on the reverse, the late Queen on the obverse. But the government simultaneously made an announcement that the King's effigy will be appearing on Canadian coinage as soon as they can get an effigy, probably by a Canadian artist.
And not just coins, right?
That's right. The government also has announced today that the Bank of Canada has been asked to replace the late Queen on the $20 bill with the King. So that is, you know, really our history has always, really almost back to the beginning of the Bank of Canada, has always featured members of the royal family. In fact, Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret were featured on a bill in the 1930s before it was ever thought she would be Queen. So that's a significant announcement. But again, it goes to the daily change that we're going to start to see as this new King's reign starts.
And another daily change for those people who still use mail, and there are some of us, is a new stamp.
That's right, a nice new stamp with a picture of the King looking straight at the viewer. It's going to be released, and that will be coming out. And we also saw some very important heraldic announcements today around a new crown, a very distinctive crown for Canada based on the Tudor crown, but with some really interesting Canadian elements in it.
And tell me a little bit, for people watching, like, why does that crown matter? How is it represented for us?
Well, I think, you know, we use the Tudor crown because the king has decided to use the Tudor crown. It's kind of got this kind of curved shape at the top, but it has a cross at the top. And I think for Canada, that's a bit problematic because we're increasingly, like the UK itself, a much more secular society. So you see the maple leaves in this new crown, you see the snowflake of the Order of Canada at the top, and you see symbolism representing Canadian rivers and waters. And that's also very significant in Indigenous culture. Now, if you're in the RCMP or the Canadian Forces or a police force across Canada, if you have a crown on your badge, on your uniform, in time, that is going to be the crown that you're going to use as we go forward. The government has said that's not going to replace the crown in the arms of Canada for the time being, but people are going to start to see that, and it's going to be a distinctive symbol, which reminds us that while we share a king with other countries, it is a distinctive Canadian crown, and we are an independent nation.
I just have about a minute left, but I did want to ask you, I thought Minister LeBlanc made a poignant statement when he said, if we are here today, it's because of our institutions like the crown. Sort of, you know, talking a bit about the concerns people have in this country about how relevant the monarchy still is.
Yeah, his speech today really talked a lot about what the purpose of the institution was, what it's given us, an independent head of state, nonpartisan. That's something that's really important in these times when you know how fractious the parliamentary system is and our parliamentary government, the House of Commons is. But also it tells us, you know, we have an independent honor system and we have all sorts of other aspects which are able to unite us because we have this independent system.
We sure do. Okay, thanks so much, Richard. My colleague Michael Couture was listening and inside that ceremony. I believe he's just outside the building where the ceremony took place. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Vashti, how you doing?
Good. And tell me a little bit about what struck you, what you're taking away from that ceremony.
Yeah, I think that first speech by Albert Dumont, first talking about honoring the commitment with Indigenous people and talking about how he wants the crown and he wants King Charles III to hear the voice of the elders and restore our relationship with them and our people. And that, again, a call to the new monarch about restoring that relationship and continuing on that road to reconciliation. And I thought also the words of the slam poet, Sabrina Benim, she was talking a lot about the environment. Of course, that is something that is weaved through Prince Charles at the time and now King Charles, and something that he cares very much about, and talking about that relationship as well. Some of the words that she spoke that I sort of noted there, you say, come on together, let's leave this place better than we found it. And certainly a nod to the king and certainly a nod to the future.
Thanks so much, Mike. Richard, thank you so much for your insights today. Our royal commentator, Richard Berthelsen. I'm going to throw things back from Ottawa to my colleague, Omar Sachedina, who, of course, has been providing some outstanding coverage for all of us in London. Omar?
All right, Vashti, thanks so much. And I want to bring in Afia Hagen, who has been with us for the past 8 hours or so. It has been a very special day today, steeped in history.
Absolutely.
I just want to talk a little bit about this meeting that the Governor General, Mary Simon, was pivotal in orchestrating between various leaders, First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and the King this week, a private audience with the King.
Yep.
He says he wants to reset that relationship. The fact that he's met them speaks to that. But there is still, it hasn't been any apology for the colonial legacy. Will it come in his reign?
I think it will have to come in his reign, and I think it will probably be one of the first things that he is focused on. So that meeting took place between 12 different nations, and they all said the same thing, that they want an apology for the effects of colonialism and slavery that went on during the time of the royal family, during the reign of the monarchy, not necessarily with King Charles III, but with Queen Elizabeth II and her predecessors. And lately we did have that splash on the front of the Guardian newspaper here in the UK, which talks about the the royal family's links to slavery. And then King Charles III said he was open to people going through the royal archives and digging up this information. He has no problem with that. I think that's probably a step towards him issuing an apology, but it has to be an apology. It has to come quickly. And I think it will be one of the first things that he is focused on.
And meaningful change as well, because some historians are saying, look, the archives were always accessible, and so there has to be something that's sustained and deeply meaningful. Afia Hagen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure experiencing this moment in history with you today, and just a remarkable day here in London. The coronation ceremony for King Charles and Queen Camilla is now over, and a new chapter for the royal family is beginning. We will have a complete recap of today's events on CTV National News tonight and online at ctvnews.ca. I'm Omar Sachdina, and for Vassy Kapelos, Anne-Marie Medawake, and the entire CTV News team in London, in Ottawa, and back in our national newsroom, thank you for watching. Thank you to our teams back in the national newsroom, because it has been a very early start for them. And thank you, our viewers, for sticking around with us over the past 8 hours or so. I'll see you back here tonight on CTV National News. See you soon.
God save the King. God save King Charles. Long live King Charles. May the King live forever.
King Charles III has been anointed and crowned at his historic coronation ceremony. It's the first time in 70 years that the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth has welcomed a new monarch.
On this special occasion, we not only mark the beginning of the reign of His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, but we also acknowledge the special relationship our sovereign has had with our country.
A special coronation ceremony is also held in Ottawa, unveiling new stamps, coins, and royal symbols honoring the King's connection to Canada.
Pretty sad. At least we're together, and we've got the dogs, and we're safe anyway.
And in other news, thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes as over 100 wildfires burn across Alberta. Well, hello and welcome to CTV News Channel. Thanks for joining us. I'm Angie Seth. The United Kingdom, Canada, and the entire Commonwealth are celebrating a new monarch today. King Charles III has been formally crowned at a historic ceremony steeped in a millennia of tradition.
God save the King!
The Archbishop of Canterbury placed the St. Edward's crown on the King's head during the ancient ceremony at Westminster Abbey. World leaders and dignitaries came to take part in the UK's first coronation in 70 years. The Prince of Wales and the King's heir, William, pledged his loyalty and allegiance to the monarch.
I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, and faith and truth I will bear unto you, as your liege man of life and limb. So help me God.
I swear that I will pay true allegiance to your majesty and to your heirs and successors according to law. So help me God.
And as you heard there, the congregation was asked to show their homage and service to the King. The 2-hour-long coronation is deeply rooted in history and religion. The King became the 40th reigning sovereign to be crowned at Westminster Abbey. Meantime, the King's wife, Camilla, was anointed and crowned Queen alongside him. The coronation comes almost 8 months after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, which marked an end of her 70-year reign. And the King and Queen then entered their golden stagecoach for procession through London, taking them back to Buckingham Palace. Thousands of soldiers from across the Commonwealth led the way in a magnificent display of pageantry. People lining the streets just to get a glimpse of the new monarch. And there it was, that iconic moment when the King, Queen, and members of the royal family stepped out onto the front balcony of Buckingham Palace, waving to the tens of thousands they saw cheering them on below. The ceremony ended with a military fly past, and the King and Queen went back inside the palace for some private time with their family. Justin Volk joins me now, royal historian. Justin, great to have you back here on CTV News Channel. And as you and I were speaking last night, and now we're talking today, what we could expect, well, certainly it was 2 hours of a great deal of history. Give me your impressions of what you saw unfold over several hours today.
Well, I was actually surprised by how much it remained a traditional coronation. I was expecting there to be more changes, and they did sort of accent the whole service with these modernizing touches that are very important. But the message that really came through this morning, at least to me, is that this is a traditional monarchy that is based on historical legitimacy, that supports this relationship with Parliament that is bound together by the Constitution. So they're really reinforcing this idea of legitimacy and consistency, but one that can adapt to the modern world.